Hey there, you've made incredible progress so far, and I can tell you're eager to put all your newfound knowledge to use in a real world project. Well, guess what? The moment has arrived. You're finally ready to embark on a journey to design a sleek and modern landing page together. So, without further ado, let's dive into the next lesson and get started. The first thing we need before designing a project is a project brief. But what's a project brief and why do we need that? A project brief is a document that outlines the objectives, requirements, and expectations of a specific project. It serves as a roadmap and a foundation for the entire UI/UX design process. Think of a project brief as a blueprint or a guide that helps you understand what needs to be achieved and how to approach it. It typically includes information about the target audience, project goals, desired outcomes, technical constraints, timelines, budgets, and any specific design preferences. It's like a compass that guides designers on their journey to create impactful and user-friendly designs. So who provides this valuable project brief? Typically, it's the client or project stakeholder who provides the brief. They are the ones who outline their objectives, requirements, and expectations for the project. Sometimes, however, the client isn't capable of writing a brief. In that case, you can prepare it with the client's help. But why is a project brief so important for any UI/UX design project? There is a number of reasons, but here are the most important ones. Number one, clear understanding. It helps everyone involved, including designers, clients, and stakeholders, to have a shared understanding of the project. It clarifies the purpose, scope, and objectives, ensuring that everyone is on the same page. In the initial stages of my career, I always had issues with defining the project scope clearly in the beginning, and due to this, I encountered many other issues along the way. For instance, the client and I agreed on the project scope, timeline, and budget, and once the project was done, the client came back to me and said, well, we thought you would design these other features as well, although it wasn't mentioned initially. The problem was caused by not defining the project scope clearly in the beginning. So make sure to keep this in mind because it's going to save you so much time, resources, and money. The next important point is focus and direction. A project brief provides a clear direction for the design process. It outlines the problem to be solved and helps designers stay focused on meeting the project goals, avoiding unnecessary deviations or scope creep. The third point is alignment with the target audience. The brief provides information about the target audience, their needs, and their preferences. This helps designers create user-centered designs that resonate with the intended users, resulting in better user experiences. The next point is efficient communication. A project brief serves as a communication tool between clients, stakeholders, and designers. It facilitates effective collaboration by establishing a common language and understanding, reducing the chances of misunderstandings or misinterpretations. And the last point is project management. The brief acts as a reference document throughout the project. It helps in planning, estimating timelines, and allocating resources effectively. It also provides a basis for evaluating the success of the project upon completion. I hope you now understand how important a project brief is for any UI/UX design project. So for the project we are going to design, we also need a project brief. But since it's a fictional project, I prepared the brief in advance to accelerate the process. Let's go through this and see what we have here. Alright, the project brief title says Polio CRM landing page. Let's go through the project overview. Polio, a cutting-edge CRM software company, is seeking a modern single-page landing page design for their CRM product. The landing page aims to captivate potential customers, effectively communicate the key features and benefits of Polio's CRM solution, and ultimately drive conversions. Now let's go through the objectives. Number one, create a visually stunning and user-friendly landing page that reflects the professionalism and innovation of Polio's CRM product. Number two, communicate the unique value proposition of the CRM solution, highlighting its features, benefits, and advantages over competitors. Number three, Capture the attention of the target audience and encourage them to take action, such as signing up for a free trial or requesting a demo. And number 4, ensure seamless navigation and responsiveness across various devices, optimizing the user experience. Now let's learn more about the target audience. The target audience for the CRM SaaS landing page consists of businesses ranging from small startups to large enterprises across diverse industries. The audience includes sales teams, customer service representatives, and business owners or managers who are seeking a reliable, efficient, and customizable CRM solution to streamline their operations and enhance customer relationship management. Now let's go through the design requirements. Number 1, utilize a modern, minimalist design approach that emphasizes elegance and professionalism. Number 2, incorporate the primary brand color, black, while considering appropriate contrasting elements for visual interest and legibility. Number 3, use high-quality visuals including relevant illustrations and product screenshots to showcase the CRM solution's key features and benefits. Number 4, ensure clear and concise messaging that effectively communicates the unique selling points and advantages of Polio's CRM product. Number 5, implement a user-centric design focusing on intuitive navigation, compelling call-to-action buttons, and a seamless user experience across desktop, tablet, and mobile devices. Number 6, optimize the landing page for fast loading speed, considering appropriate image compression techniques. And number 7, include social proof elements such as testimonials or client logos to enhance credibility and trust in Polio's CRM solution. What about the timeline and deliverables? Initial design concepts and wireframes within 1 week of the project initiation. Design iterations and refinements up to 2 weeks based on client feedback and collaboration. Final design delivery within 3 weeks of project initiation, including all necessary design assets, for example, graphics, icons, images in relevant file formats. What about the budget? The client has allocated a budget of $10,000 for the design of the Polio CRM landing page. The budget includes the design phase, revisions, and delivery of the final design assets. Any additional development or implementation requirements will be discussed separately. So this is generally what a project brief looks like, and based on this information, we can start the design process. In this video, we are going to talk about design systems and why they are crucial for UI design projects. What's a design system? A design system is like a toolbox for designers and developers. It's a collection of ready-to-use design components, guidelines, and principles that help maintain consistency and efficiency in the design process. Imagine having a set of pre-designed buttons, colors, fonts, and other building blocks that you can easily use to create a cohesive and professional-looking interface. Having a design system brings several benefits. Firstly, it ensures consistency throughout your product. By using the same components and following the same guidelines, you create a unified and recognizable experience for your users. Secondly, it saves time and effort. Instead of reinventing the wheel for every new feature or page, you can rely on the existing components and guidelines, making the design and development process much faster. A design system also helps with scalability. As your product grows, you can add new features and pages while maintaining a consistent look and feel. It promotes collaboration among team members because everyone is on the same page, using the same components and guidelines. Now let's talk about the atomic design methodology. It's an approach that breaks down the design process into smaller, reusable components. Think of it as building blocks. You start with simple elements called atoms, like buttons, labels, or icons that can't be broken down into smaller, meaningful elements. Then you combine atoms to create more complex components called molecules, such as navigation menus or search bars. These molecules can then be combined to form even larger components called organisms, like headers or product cards. Next, we have templates. Templates define the layout and structure of a page, and pages represent the final specific instances of those templates with real content. By following the atomic design methodology, you can create a modular and scalable design system. It helps you design and organize components in a logical way, making it easier to reuse and assemble them into beautiful interfaces. The goal is to save time, maintain consistency, and create a seamless user experience. It's good to mention that not all companies use a comprehensive design system for their products, but the most popular companies nowadays have a design system in place. Apple has its own design system called Human Interface Guideline, Google calls its design system Material, IBM uses the Carbon design system, and Adobe uses the Spectrum design system. Each of these companies created their own design system in a way that works best for their products. We are also going to create our own design system for the polio project we are going to work on. So I'll see you in the next video. Welcome back. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a design system from scratch in Figma. So first of all, go ahead and create a new design file here. And right here, I'm going to click on this page 1 and I'm going to rename this to Foundation to just keep everything organized. Of course, it's optional, but I always tend to keep everything organized. And I highly recommend you do the same. Now I'm going to add one more page right here, and I'm going to add an arrow icon here. I'm going to hit Control Command Spacebar on my keyboard to open up this emoji window. If it's not available on your OS, that's fine. You can just skip this part. But to just keep everything organized, I prefer to add an arrow icon like this. And then here, I'm going to type colors. And also, I'm going to add some indentation to the left part of this arrow, like this. So this is going to be the page where we place all our colors and all our color swatches and create our color styles. So now here, I'm going to hit A on my keyboard to create a custom size frame, just like this. I'm going to set its width to 1440, like that. And we will adjust the height later. You can just rename it to colors. All right, here what we need is a simple text layer. I'm gonna hit T on my keyboard to create a text layer, and I'm gonna type colors. The font size doesn't matter at the moment. I'm just gonna change the weight here to bold, something like this. And right underneath, I'm gonna add a divider, like a line. So I'm just gonna draw a line like this. Okay, let me select them both, add auto layout to them, hit Shift and A, and I'm gonna call it heading. Now I can select this line inside and just change its color, make it a little bit lighter, like this. All right, right underneath, we need to start creating our color swatches. In the previous section, you've learned how to use the color theory, the color wheel, the color harmonies, and you've also learned how to combine them properly. So once you picked your colors for your project, you need to start creating a few color swatches. You might say that, all right, can't we just go to any color palette creator like Coolers, and from here, once our color palette is done, just export it like this. I'm gonna export the palette. I'm gonna click on SVG and just drag and drop it inside. Can't you do that? Well, you can, but if you do that, you'll face some issues, because although these colors are harmonious, they are not enough for designing a complete project. Why? Because here for each color, we only have 1 or 2 shades at most, and that's not enough. Imagine your primary color is this blue. All right. If you want to design a whole project using this blue and this red, you need to have at least 10 different shades and tints of these colors, because you'll need them to create a good visual hierarchy and when you want to create separation. When you don't have enough tints and enough shades, it would be so hard and you can't design an accessible project. So what should you do? Well, imagine you created your color palette, your harmonious color palette using a website like Coolers, okay? Imagine this is your color palette. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 colors. Once you pick these 5 colors, you need to create different shades and different tints of these colors. And as I said, at least 10. I prefer 11 and I'll tell you why, but 10 is the bare minimum. How can you create those tints and shades? Well, one way is to manually create them. So you can just copy this color code. You can go to Figma, and here you can create a frame. You can add a fill to it, paste it here, and use it as your base color. Then you can duplicate it, move it to the right, duplicate it a few times to get a few color swatches. Then you can select the next frame, go to the fill section, and here you can adjust it. For example, you can make it darker to create a darker shade. You can make it lighter to create a lighter tint, just like this. And it's fine, you can do it manually. However, it's so time consuming. And when you do that, you cannot be sure that your colors, your color combinations have enough contrast. So you cannot be sure of the contrast ratio. Yes, you can check the contrast ratio of your colors later, but it's not an efficient process. Instead, you can use some plugins in Figma. So one of the ways is this. You select your base color, you head over to the resources, and from here you head over to the plugins tab, and here you can look for a plugin. There are many plugins that allow you to create different shades and different tints of your color. For example, let's type shade here, and you'll find this color shades plugin. If you run it, it allows you to create different shades and different tints of your color. You can simply select your base color using this eyedropper, and there it is. Your color shades are created. You can hit create, and it will create these color swatches. This is one way of doing that, but there is also another way that I highly recommend. I use a website called uicolors.app. If you go to this website, it allows you to create different shades and different tints of your color right here in the browser, but it also allows you to preview your color palette, all these shades and tints right underneath. As you can see here, you have a few examples like this card, and if you hover over its background, you'll see that here we have a gradient using two colors, this one and this one. Then if you hover over this text, you'll see its particular shade here as well. Here we have this calendar. You will see how this calendar is created. And if I scroll down, you'll see here we have a banner, we have these buttons. So I highly recommend using this website because you can preview your colors in action immediately right here. So once you picked your color, let me just select this color code, copy it, and just paste it right here. It will create all these shades and tints for you, okay? And here you'll see this little circle, which indicates that this is gonna be your base color. Then if you're satisfied with all these shades and tints, you can click on export. Here you have a few options. You can head over to the SVG and click on copy code. Now we can head over to Figma and just hit Ctrl V or Command V. And as you can see, all these color swatches are created for you. So this is, in my opinion, the best possible way of creating a color palette, because as I said, you can preview your colors here live, and also you can click on this contrast grid, and it allows you to see whether these colors have enough contrast or not, and how you can combine them to make your design accessible. Now you can select the next color, maybe this one, paste it here if this is gonna be your accent color. Then you can export it in the same way and just paste it right here. Let me just increase the height of this frame. I'm gonna paste it here, and you can continue doing that. You can select this one, copy it, and just paste it here, and it will create your neutral colors, export it, and paste it right there. So that's basically how you should create different shades and different tints of your colors. As I said, one shade or one tint is not enough for designing a complete project. Always have at least 10, but I use 11. I actually add one more color swatch to my color palette usually. I duplicate this first tint and move it to the left side like this, and I make it even lighter, okay? This is optional and it shouldn't be necessarily done if it's not needed in your case, but I find it helpful to have very light colors like this for backgrounds or for text layers that should be placed on dark backgrounds. So I make it a little bit lighter, just like this, close to white, and then my color palette will be ready. Once your color swatches are ready, you need to go ahead and create your color styles. As we already talked about it, color styles allow you to reuse colors again and again and again across your project. And basically all the elements using those color styles will be linked to that particular color style, and you can modify it easily. I already showed you how to create color styles, but here I'm going to go through it once again to show you how I name these color swatches. So here, as you can see, if I go to this website, here we have 50, 100, 200, 300, 400, etc. So as the color gets darker, this number increases. This is a very common way of naming color styles. I use this naming convention myself because once you see this color number, like 600, you can quickly get an idea of how dark or how light that color is. And many developers and many designers use this naming convention. All right, now let's get back to Figma. So I'm going to start with this one. I'm going to select it. I'm going to head over to the fill section and just click on this little icon. And here we need to click on this plus icon to create a style. Here you can create a category. You can just type primary if it's your primary color. 25 since I created one additional swatch. But if you don't want to create an additional swatch, you should start from 50. I'm going to type 25, hit create style. Then I'm going to select the next swatch, go to the style section, hit this plus icon, type primary, /. Now I'm going to select this, copy it to reuse it again and again easily. And this one is going to be 50, hit enter. And we need to continue doing that. I'm going to select the next one. This one is going to be primary 100. The next one is going to be primary 200. And we need to continue doing that. If the blue one is your accent color, you need to select this one and you need to create a new category. Okay, you need to hit this plus icon. I'm going to type accent /, and this one is going to be 25, hit enter, and you need to create all these color styles manually. So that's the first step you need to take when you create a design system. For our project, we need to have color styles, text styles, we need to have icons and grids as well. Now I'm going to show you one more thing. I'm going to get rid of all these color swatches, just remove them. If I go to this website again, uicolors.app, and if I head over to the Browse tab right here, you'll see here we have Tailwind CSS colors. If you are not familiar with Tailwind, basically it's a CSS framework for developers. You don't need to know about its detail, but this framework has its own standard colors like rose, pink, purple, I don't know, blue, sky, etc. And if I scroll down and down, you'll see that we have all the possible colors we may need for a project. We have red, orange, amber, etc. And here we have some neutral colors like stone, neutral, zinc, gray, and slate. I personally, for most projects, use these colors, okay? I don't manually create color palettes on these websites. If you want, you can, but I really like these color palettes because I'm sure about the contrast ratio of these colors. I know that they will be accessible and they look very good on almost all projects. And here you can just toggle UI examples to see all the UI examples of these colors. I actually use these colors in my projects. So I create all these color palettes like rose, pink, purple, violet, etc. all of them. And then I create color styles right here in Figma. And you can also do the same. But if you're not satisfied with these colors, you can always pick your own color palette. For this polio project, I also want to use these colors. So basically, I create one general design system for all my projects that include all these color palettes. And if for one project I need to use pink, I use these shades and these tints. If I need to use blue, I use these tints and these shades. And that's exactly what I'm going to do for this project. I'm not going to create a design system specifically created for this polio CRM project. Instead, I'm going to place all these color palettes right here, and then I'll be able to use this design system for my other projects as well. This is the method I prefer to use, but it's not a must. I just find it very convenient to have all these colors in my design system. So are we going to go ahead and export all these color palettes here and just paste them in Figma and create color styles? Of course not, because it's so time consuming. I already created all these color swatches and color styles, as you can see right here, and I'm going to show you how you can use this file as well later. But I just wanted to show you the process of creating color styles and color swatches for your project. Welcome back! In this video, we are going to continue working on our design system, and we are going to talk about typography. So here, I'm going to create another page, and I'm just going to copy this name here and paste it for this one, and I'm going to rename it to typography to create a separate page for our text styles. And now I'm going to hit A on my keyboard to create a frame. Let me choose this one. I can go to the colors page, and here I'm going to select the heading, copy it, and paste it right here, and just change this text to typography. And right underneath, we need to create all our text styles. So how can we know the best font size, the best font weight, etc.? Well, one way is to just create a text like this. You can call it heading H1, and then you can just increase this font size to like 60, a random number. Let me just increase it to 60. You can change the weight to whatever you want, maybe bold, extra bold, etc. And then you can create a text style out of it. Then you can just duplicate this, move it down, and just randomly decrease this number to like, I don't know, 50, and just change it to H2, and then create another text style, duplicate it, and randomly modify these values. But that's not a good way, and your type scale wouldn't look good. So instead, we need to use a formula. How? You can use a website called Typescale. If you go to typescale.com, here you can specify your base size. Usually for web design and mobile application design, we set the base size to 16 pixels. Then you can specify the scale. So the scale is basically a mathematical ratio between these texts. So here we have major third, we have minor third, major second, minor second, we have perfect fourth, golden ratio. You might be familiar with the golden ratio as well. So which one of these scales should we use? Well, it depends. If you want to design a website for a fashion company where you usually use larger font sizes, in that case, I would use maybe the perfect fifth or the golden ratio. Why? Because when you use these ratios like augmented fourth, perfect fifth, or golden ratio, the difference between two text styles is huge. Therefore, you'll get very large titles like this. But for most projects, we don't need to use these large text layers. Instead, we can use something like major third or even minor third. These are fine. You can use major third, minor third, sometimes major second. There is no standard, okay? I prefer to use these two, to be honest. Major third is better, minor third is also fine, but there is no standard. So let's suppose we want to use major third. Here we have the base size, and using this scale method, it creates this type scale. How? So here the base size is 16, right? If you multiply this value by 1.25, you'll get 20. Let me prove that to you. I'm going to open up the calculator, and here I'm going to type 16 times 1.250, and you'll get 20. Now, if you multiply 20 by 1.25, guess what? We'll get 25. And so on. So that's basically how it works. Now, if I divide this value, 16 by 1.25, look what we get. I'm going to type 16 divided by 1.25. We'll get 12.80. So that's how a type scale is created. And this way you can be sure that your type scale is harmonious and it actually has a rhythm. If you need larger font sizes, you can simply click on this plus icon right here, and one more text will be added right above this last one. If you need another one, you can just continue doing that. For most projects, you usually need a type scale starting from a very small textile like 12. 12 is a good number usually, all the way to around 72. That's usually enough for most projects. But you might ask, Arash, should we just keep these font sizes like this, 61.04? Of course not, it's not good. So here you can just round it up to 62. You can round it up to 49. This one could be 39 or 40. This one could be 31 again, etc. Once you created your type scale, you need to go ahead and create your text styles in Figma. How can you do that? Here I'm going to type display 2XL regular. All right. And let's suppose this is going to be my largest text style. Let's say 76. Okay. So I set the font size to 76 here, and I'm going to change the weight to regular like this. Let's decrease its width like that. And then I head over to the text style here, hit the plus button and just call it display 2XL / regular. So I basically created this category, display 2XL, which indicates the size of this text style. And then right under this category, I created this regular style. So I hit create style, and just like this, my first text style is ready. Then for this 2XL size, I just duplicate it, move it to the right side. Now I'm gonna change it to display 2XL medium. I don't change the size, I just change the weight. I personally prefer to have at least 4 different weights. Some designers use more, some designers use less, but 4 is a good spot. Now I'm gonna detach it from its previous style and just change the weight to medium, then create a new style. Again, just type display 2XL / medium. Like this. Next, we need to duplicate it, move it to the right side. Let me expand this frame's width like that. This time we need to have display 2XL semi-bold like this. Detach it from its style, change the weight to semi-bold, create a new style. Again, display 2XL semi-bold, hit create style, and one more for the bold weight. I'm going to duplicate it, move it to the right, detach it from its style, and just change it to bold. Let me capitalize this one as well. And just change the weight to bold here and create a new text style, display 2XL bold. And just like that, we created a category of display 2XL. So if I just click somewhere around here in my canvas, you will see under the text styles, we have this display 2XL category. And underneath, we have these 4 variations: regular, medium, semi-bold, and bold. With the same size, of course, because we just changed the weight of these text styles. Next, we need to select this one, duplicate it, move it down, and just rename it to display XL instead of 2XL. Again, regular, detach it from its style. Here we need to change the font size to 61. I'm going to change it to 61. The weight should be regular. Duplicate it, move it to the right. This one is going to be medium. I'm going to change the weight to medium. Duplicate it, move it to the right. This one is going to be semi-bold. I'm going to change the weight to semi-bold and duplicate it, move it to the right. And this one is going to be bold. Let me change the weight here to bold. Now we need to create these text styles. So I'm going to select this one, head over to the text styles window, hit the plus button, and here I'm going to type display XL / regular. The next one is going to be display XL / medium. The next one is going to be display XL / semi-bold. And the next one is going to be display XL / bold. Just like this, we created two different categories of text. And basically, you need to continue doing that until all your text styles are created. But since it's a time-consuming process, again, I already prepared a comprehensive text scale that you can use in your projects and also for the Polio CRM project. Welcome back! Once your colors and text styles are ready, you need to create your icons. So here, I'm gonna hit this plus button. I'm gonna just copy this text and paste it here. And I'm gonna type icons. Well, as for the icons, you don't need to design them as a UI UX designer. You can if you want for some specific use cases, but it's a very time-consuming process and I highly recommend not to do that because there are many libraries available that you can use in your projects, both paid and free libraries. So the way I organize my icons is like this. I create a frame like that, and I categorize my icons. For example, if the library I'm using has some icons about activities, I'm gonna rename this frame to activities like this. And then I put all the icons related to activities right here. You can use different plugins to get some icons. For example, one of the good ones is the Icon Sacks plugin, this one, which provides you with 6,000 different icons. If you just run it, you can simply look for your desired icon and just drag and drop it into your design system. Let's suppose you need this one. You just drag and drop it here. Let's suppose you need this one. Just drag and drop it. Here you have different styles of icons like solid, outline, etc. Let's drag and drop this one as well and this one as well. So imagine you have these 4 icons in your library. Okay, so you put it here. Then you need to convert them to components. You need to componentize them. How? It's so simple. You just need to select all these icons, head over to the toolbar, and here just click on create multiple components. And as soon as you do that, all these icons will be converted to components. If you go to the assets panel now, you see under the activities, you will have these icons like this. But of course, these icons are not enough for a project, right? And you are not sure how many icons you would need and what kind of icon you would need for a project. So let me mention one good website in this regard. You can go to iconor.com, and this website provides you with royalty-free and open source icons for your project. And these icons are very well designed. In fact, I use them for many of my projects and you don't need to pay for them. It's very cool, isn't it? So here, if you just scroll down, you can browse these icons like this. You can go through all these icons. You have different categories like 3D editor, 37 icons. You have actions, 54 icons, and so on. You have activities, and here you can customize the size and the stroke weight, like the thickness of these lines, and even the color. The color doesn't matter, we usually change them in Figma. And since these are SVG icons, you can simply click on copy SVG, head over to Figma and hit Ctrl V or Command V, and it will be pasted right here. And then you can turn it into a component. So should you go ahead and just copy them and paste them one by one here and turn them into components? Nope, because I already did that for you. I categorized all these icons and I turned them into components already. So you can just focus on your project instead. Welcome back. In this video, we're going to continue working on our design system and we need to add one more page to the foundation section. Here, I'm going to add one more page. As usual, let's copy this name and paste it here. And here, I'm going to type grids and spacing. All right, for this page, basically, we need to have 2 different frames. One for the spatial spacing system, like the numbers that are going to be increments of 4, like 4, 8, 12, etc. And one frame for our layout grids, the fixed and fluid ones that we already talked about. So I'm going to hit A on my keyboard to create a frame like this. I'm going to set the width to 1440. You can adjust it later if you want. And I'm going to rename this frame to spacing. I'm going to head over to the typography page. And from here, I'm gonna select this heading, copy it and paste it right here and just change it to spacing like that. And here you can simply create a text and just type 4 pixels like this. You can even start using your text styles here, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to change the weight here to medium. Right next to this, I'm going to create a frame like that. And I'm going to set its width to 4. Now I'm going to add a fill to this frame. It could be something like light red, something like this. And now I'm going to select them both, hit Shift and A to add auto layout to them, and align everything to center. And let's just rename it to base. This is going to be our base unit. Next, I'm going to duplicate it, hit Ctrl D or Command D, move it down, and just change this text to 8. And also, I'm going to select this frame and just change its width to 8. Like this. Now I'm going to select these two and put them inside another auto layout frame. So hit Shift and A and just call it spacing system. Now I'm going to select this one, duplicate it. I'm going to change this one to 12 and just select this frame and change the width to 12. So what we are doing now is optional. Why? Because we cannot save these values, unfortunately, in Figma. We cannot save these spacing units to reuse them again and again, like what we can do with color styles and text styles. However, the reason we document everything here is because if someone joins us to work on this project, or when you hand over this project to the developer, he or she can understand how your spacing system works. So that's why we are documenting everything here. Now I'm going to select this spacing system and I'm going to change this spacing between items to 8, and we just need to continue duplicating these base units just like this and change these values. So we don't need to go ahead and create them all because I already did that. I just wanted to show you how you need to create this spatial system and how you need to document it for other designers and for developers. All right, but what about the layout grids? The layout grids are very important. So let me create another frame, another desktop frame here. Basically, for landing page projects, we usually need to have 4 different layout grids. One fixed grid for desktop, one fluid grid for desktop, one fluid grid for tablet, and one fluid grid for mobile. Of course, for different types of projects, you might need to have more grids. For example, if you design a web app that has a sidebar, you might need to create different grids for that project. But for websites and landing pages, these 4 types of grids are enough. So let's start with the desktop grid, the fixed one, okay? So the way we create it is like this. We make this desktop frame a little bit larger, like this. Then we create another desktop frame and we put it inside this one, okay? We can change its color a little bit, like that. And I'm gonna add a text to it. I'm gonna create a text layer and I'm gonna type desktop 1920 pixels. And let's increase its font size. And I'm going to make it semi-bold. I'm going to align it to the center. Now let's create the grid itself. As I said, for the desktop version, we need at least 2 types of grids, the fluid grid and the fixed grid. So let's create the fixed grid first. I'm going to rename this one to desktop large. And while it's selected, I'm going to head over to the layout grid, hit this plus button, and just change the type here to columns. As I mentioned before in our previous lessons, for web design and mobile application design, we usually use a column grid. So for the count, I'm going to set it to 12. And since it's going to be a fixed layout grid, the type should be center. So the layout grid should always stay right at the center. As for the width, I'm going to set it to 80. And for the gutter, I'm going to set it to 32. And yes, you're right. These numbers are also increments of 4. This frame's width at the moment is set to 1440. I'm going to increase it to 1920 like that. And I'm going to align it to the center. And this text should be aligned to the center as well. So if I try to modify the width of this frame, look what happens. You see, this layout grid stays right at the center. So the column width and the gutter between these columns are fixed. They are not changing constantly. The only thing that changes is the margin around it. So let me set it back to 1920. Now I'm going to create a layout grid style. So if I just head over to the layout grid section and I just click on this icon, I'm gonna click on this plus icon, and here I'm going to type grid / desktop large just like this. All right, now we can move on to the next layout grid, which is gonna be fluid. So I'm gonna duplicate this one, move it down, and I'm gonna change this text to desktop 1440 pixels, like this. Align it to the center. And here I'm gonna rename this frame to desktop and just change this layout grid. First, we need to detach it from its layout grid, like this. Then we need to head over to the settings here, change the type to stretch because it's going to be fluid. Therefore, the width is going to be adjusted automatically by Figma, and the margin and the gutter can be set. I'm not going to change the gutter. The gutter is going to be 32, but I'm going to set the margin to 150. You might say, why 150? I'm going to tell you why, but before we do that, let me go ahead and create this layout grid style. I'm going to hit this plus button. Here I'm going to type grid/desktop. Now I'm going to select this desktop frame and I'm going to decrease its width to 1440, just like this. And as you can see, it's a fluid grid. So the column's width is changing constantly like this. So I'm going to set it back to 1440. Now you might ask, why did I use those numbers, those particular values when we created this layout grid? Well, because I wanted to have a specific width for my container. So if I go ahead and create a frame here inside, starting from this first column and ending right here, you will see that the width of this container is 1140 pixels. For most projects, I use this particular container width. Different designers use different container sizes, but this one is quite common and it works very well. At least for my projects, it worked very well in the past. If you're not sure which container size is better for your project, you can just use these values in the beginning of your career, and later as you gained more and more experiences, you can just adjust these values according to your needs. But these values work quite well for most projects. All right, let me remove this frame. Now we need to create a tablet layout grid. So I'm gonna expand this frame like this. For the tablets, I'm gonna hit A on my keyboard, and if I go to the tablet category here, you can see that we have a few options. Some designers prefer to use iPad Pro 11. Some designers prefer to use this one. I prefer to use iPad mini because this is the smallest one. And it's always best to use the smallest frame size because when you design for a small frame size, it's much easier to just enlarge everything later and make everything responsive than scaling things down. So I'm going to click on this iPad mini like this. Put it right here. Let me change the background to this light gray. And for the tablet, I'm going to create a fluid layout grid. We don't need a fixed layout grid. Here, I'm going to add a layout grid to it. Let's change the type to columns. But how many columns do we need for a tablet? For the tablet, we usually use 8 columns. The type should be stretch because it's going to be fluid. And I'm going to set the margin and gutter to 32 and 32 like this. Now let me select this text, copy it and paste it here and just align it to the center, change it to tablet, and the size is going to be 744 pixels. And let's rename this frame to tablet. Now let's create our grid style. I'm going to hit this plus button. Let's type grid/tablet like this. And the last layout grid we need to create is the mobile version. So for that, I'm going to duplicate this one, move it down. Let's rename it to mobile. What about the width of the mobile version? Well, again, let's use the smallest phone. Here, if I go to the phone category, you see that the smallest iPhone is iPhone SE, but I prefer to use iPhone 13 mini. This one would be too small, so I prefer to use this one, 375. Therefore, I'm going to select this mobile frame, change the width to 375. I'm going to change this text to mobile 375 pixels like this. And now let's change the grid. First, let's detach it from its grid. Let's decrease the count to 4. The type should be stretch. And I'm going to set the margin and gutter to 16 and 16. just like this. Let me decrease its height here to 812. It doesn't matter, but I just want to make sure that everything is proportional here in our design system. And now we have all the layout grids we need for designing a landing page or a website. Welcome back. So far you've learned how to add color styles, text styles, icons, and grids and spacing to your design system. However, a design system is much more than that. Well, basically a design system can include buttons, sliders, many different types of UI elements, but there is a common mistake that many junior designers make nowadays. They think that for all projects, they need to have a comprehensive design system in place. They think that they need to make everything ready in the beginning before they start working on a project. So they create buttons, they create sliders, they create calendars, they create tags, etc. And then when they start working on the project and when the project is ready, they see that they didn't use any of those components and any of those elements they designed. Don't get me wrong, having a comprehensive design system is very good, but it's not needed for all projects. For some projects, you don't need to create all kinds of components like sliders, like charts, etc. Some projects don't require them. But for all kinds of projects, make sure to have the foundation in place like colors, typography, icons, and grid system. These are the necessary things inside your design system. For the Polio CRM project, we are not going to create different components here in our design system like buttons, tags, sliders, etc. because we don't know how many different types of components we need. Now I'm going to show you how to use the design system that I already prepared with all the color swatches I showed you, with all the text styles I showed you and all the icons, so you can use that design system for the Polio CRM project. But you might say, why didn't we use it in the first place? Well, because I wanted to show you how I create a design system. I wanted you to know the process of creating a design system. But now that you know how it's done, we can save time and jump right into the design process. Attached to this lesson, you can find a file called design system. You can download it. And once you downloaded it, you can just import it to Figma. You can simply drag and drop it inside. Alright, it's done. Open it up, and here as you can see again we have the foundation, we have colors, typography, icons, grids, and spacing. But if you go to colors here, you will see that I already created all these color swatches. I also added 2 more color swatches to the Tailwind CSS framework colors, the base colors, black and white, and we have all the colors that I already showed you. And you don't need to create color styles for them because I already did that. On the right side, you can see that we have all these color styles. Now you can go to typography. And here, as you can see, I created this complete typography scale. If I just zoom in, as you can see, we have display 2XL, we have 4 different weights. We have display XL, 4 different weights, display large, display medium, display small, display XS. Then we have text XL, text large, text medium, text small, and text extra small. And for each of them, obviously we have 4 different weights. You might ask, why did I use this naming convention like text small, text medium, text large? This is called the t-shirt sizing naming convention, and it's quite common among designers and developers. And the reason I use that in my projects is because it's universal. So you don't need to create different typography text styles for different devices like for desktop, tablet, and mobile. But some designers prefer to have like heading H1, H2, H3, etc., paragraph, body text. It's also fine. It's just a matter of preference. I prefer this naming convention because I find it easy to use. And here I'm going to point out something. If I just zoom in, you can see that here you'll find the font size of this particular text style. You'll see the line height and the tracking. So basically each of these text styles has a unique line height, and some of them have a unique tracking as well, or letter spacing. When it comes to line height and tracking, there is no standard. However, there is one thing to keep in mind. For smaller font sizes, you need to increase the line height to improve the readability and legibility of the text. But for larger font sizes, you can decrease the line height, because it's already readable. This is a general rule, but there is no formula for finding the perfect line height. I tried different values for different projects, and I think these line heights and these tracking values are the best. You can adjust them if you want depending on the typeface you use. Here I use the Plus Jakarta Sans font, which is a free Google font. You can just download it on Google's website. Let me show you. If you go to fonts.google.com, here you can search for Jakarta Sans. There it is, Plus Jakarta Sans. This is the typeface that I use for modern projects, and I'm gonna use it for the Polio CRM project as well. And here you can just click on this download family and it will be downloaded on your computer. You can install these fonts on your computer. However, if you are using the Figma browser version, you need to install the Figma font installer on your computer as well to let Figma get access to your local fonts. To download the font installer, you need to go to figma.com/downloads. You can click on one of these links depending on your OS, install it, and then Figma will be able to get access to your local fonts. Alright, next we have icons. Here, as you can see, I prepared all these categories of icons and I turned them into components. So if you go to the assets, here you'll see all these categories and you can start using them easily. And finally, we have the grids and spacing. Here we have the spatial spacing system. As I mentioned, I already prepared them for you, so you don't need to worry about anything. And on the right side, we have the layout grids. We have the fixed layout grid with all these annotations. You can see the container size, you can see the gutter amount. Then here we have the fluid type. You can see the container size again. Here we have the tablet version, and finally the mobile version. Once your design system is ready, you can head over to assets, and here you will find this book icon. If you just click on it, this window pops up, and here you can publish your design system. Basically, when you publish your design system, when you create a new project or a new design file, you can connect this design system to that project or to that design file, and then you can use all these color styles and text styles and components, etc. Some features are only available to paid users, so keep that in mind. But if you have a free account, what you can do is just duplicate this design system whenever you create a new project. So just right click on it, click on duplicate, then just rename it here to whatever you want. Let's call it new project. And then open it up and start working on your project here. But make sure to keep one design system intact so you can just get a copy of it whenever it's needed. Alright guys, now that our design system is ready, we can start working on our project. We can jump into the design process. If you're ready, I'll see you in the next video. Welcome back. In this video, we are going to talk about mood boards. What's a mood board? In the world of UI design, a mood board is actually a visual tool that helps designers establish the overall look and feel of a project. It's like a collage or a collection of images, colors, typography, and other design elements that capture the desired mood, atmosphere, and style of a user interface. Think of a mood board as a visual brainstorming session. It serves as a source of inspiration and a way to communicate and align the design vision with other stakeholders involved in the project, such as clients, developers, or other designers. So let's create a mood board for our Polio CRM project. First of all, I'm going to open up our design system here, and I'm going to create a page here. So I'm going to hit this plus button, and let's type mood board. I'm going to move this page down here, and inside this page, I'm going to add a frame. I'm going to hit A on my keyboard and just draw a custom size frame. The dimension doesn't matter. Now we need to look for some inspiration. Where can we find some inspiration? Well, basically there are many websites we can use for this purpose. We can go to Dribbble, we can go to Behance, we can go to Pinterest, etc. Many designers prefer Dribbble because you can find many beautiful design shots there, and it's totally fine. However, my suggestion is that you should not use only one source of inspiration. The majority of the designs you see on Dribbble or on Behance have never been implemented, so you cannot be sure whether these designs work or not, whether they actually solve a problem or they are just beautiful shots. Again, there is nothing wrong with Dribbble. I personally use it on a daily basis, and you should too. But there are some other websites that provide you with some real world websites and application examples. And most of the time, those designs are more reliable because you are sure that they have been implemented and they work for those companies. But before we get into those websites, let's see whether we can find something here on Dribbble or not. So here on the home page, I'm gonna go to inspiration, and from here I'm gonna go to web design. You can also filter these designs based on the hex color code, the time frame, the number of downloads, and also tags. But now I'm just gonna go through these projects and see whether I find something useful or not. So let's open up this one. Alright, this is animated. Quite good. I really like the layout of this page, that everything is centered. Let's see if we can find something else. I'm gonna scroll down. This one again, the same layout. Let's scroll down. Okay, this one also looks good. I'm gonna open it up. I really like the layout of this website. As you can see, everything is center aligned, again with a large headline. We have this large screenshot of the app, which is good. Then we have the social proof. We have a few company logos. Then we have the features section, some testimonials, the CTA or call to action, and finally the footer. So I'm gonna right click on it and copy image, and I'm gonna paste it right here in Figma. There it is. And I'm gonna scale it down. Let me just scale it down like this. Let's place it somewhere around here. Now I'm gonna continue scrolling down to see whether I can find something else or not. All right, this one also looks good. Let's open it up. Again, the same layout, everything is centered. This is a very common design pattern, to align everything to the center and just put a large screenshot of the app or the dashboard of that product. I also like this one. Let me copy image and just paste it here. I'm gonna scale it down like this and just put it right next to the other landing page. Don't worry about the alignment and organizing these layers now. All right, I'm gonna open up this one as well. Let's see what we have. Here we have a large title, the heading, and the description. These elements are left aligned. Then on the right side, we have some visuals. Again, a very common design pattern. Here we have some social proof, some statistics. Here we have some cards. I really like these clean cards, and everything is centered. Let me scroll down. Here we have the features section, the testimonials, and the pricing, and finally the CTA. This one also looks good. So let me just copy this image, paste it here, and just scale it down like this. I'm gonna put it down here. Make sure you put it inside the frame, and I can just expand this frame's height like this. Let's look for some inspiration on other websites as well. One of the websites that provides you with real world examples is called Refero. If you just go to refero.design, here you can find many good real world examples, and you can find basically real world inspiration. Here you can find different categories like checkout page, user profile, dashboard, blog page, product details, etc. But I'm gonna look for some product page and landing page inspiration. So I'm gonna open it up and let's see what we have here. So this one looks good. It's dark mode, but it really looks good. Let me just scroll down. Let me just download this. I'm gonna place it right here. I'm gonna move it down there. Okay, what else? Let's open up this one, retool.com. All right, again, a large screenshot of the app. I really like this kind of design, to place a very large screenshot of the app, especially if you're designing a landing page for a SaaS product. This way you can grab the user's attention immediately once he or she opens up the website. To be honest, when we have this large screenshot of the product, I prefer to align everything to the center to be able to use the whole available width of the screen. I'm gonna scroll down. Here we have some features. I also really like the color palette the designer used. It's quite clean. Here we have some client logos. That's great. The features section, again, features section. And here we have a CTA section and the footer. So I'm gonna download this one as well. And let's place it inside this frame and just scale it down. What else? Let me scroll down here. All right, here we have another screenshot of this Retool website with a different layout. I really like this layout. Here we have a large heading. Everything is center aligned. We have some client logos. Again, and a screenshot of the product. Here we have a large card. Here we have the integration section. Okay, it looks very good. I really like the color palette as well. Let me just download this one as well. And I'm gonna place it here. Let me just expand this frame size like this and place it somewhere around here. Now we can go to another website called Landing Folio. If you go to landingfolio.com, here again you can find many real world projects. For example, this one. All right, again, everything is center aligned. Okay, very good. Let's see what else we can find. I'm gonna open up this one. You see this design pattern repeats again and again and again because it works. When you see something repeats again and again and again on many different projects, you can be sure that this particular layout works. And that's why I said it's better to get inspired by real world projects than just by some concept designs. Alright, I really like this design as well. Again, here we have some nice cards. Here we have a grid of cards. Very nice layout, very clean. I'm gonna copy this and paste it here. One of the features of Landing Folio is that you can actually change the device. So you can preview this design for different devices. Here we have desktop. You can preview its mobile version as well if you want to see how the layout changes. It's quite helpful. Let me scroll down. Again, the same pattern. Here we have a large heading, we have a few buttons, some client logos, and a large screenshot of the product. What about this one? Glide. Let me just change the device to desktop. Okay, it looks good and clean. Again, here we can see this card grid on this website. So probably it's a good idea to create something like this for our project as well. I really like it. What I like about these testimonials is that they are fading out, you see? So let me just copy this image as well and paste it here. All right, I guess that's enough for our project. Of course, there is no limit when it comes to getting inspiration. However, I think it's enough for our project. Now let's organize these screenshots. So I'm gonna expand this frame's width and height. I'm gonna select everything. And here, this blue square appears. If I just click on it, everything will be neatly organized. And I'm just gonna place them right here. And I can just decrease the screen's width like this. And also I can change the background color like that. You can also be creative and categorize all these screenshots based on the color palette they used, the layout, and other aspects. But if you put them all in one page, it's also fine. All right, now that our mood board is ready, it's time to create a wireframe for our project. So I'll see you in the next lesson. Welcome back. In this video, we are going to start creating a wireframe for our project. But what's a wireframe and why do we need that? A wireframe is a simplified visual representation of a user interface. It's like a blueprint that outlines the basic structure, layout, and functionality of a digital product without focusing too much on visual details or aesthetics. Think of a wireframe as the bare bones of a design. It's created to define the overall information architecture, user flow, and content placement, helping designers and stakeholders understand how different elements will be organized and interact with each other. There are generally three types of wireframes: low fidelity, mid fidelity, and high fidelity wireframes. What's the difference between them? Let's start with the low fidelity wireframes. These wireframes are the most basic and abstract representation of the design. They are often created using simple lines, shapes, and placeholders for content. Low-fidelity wireframes are ideal for early-stage conceptualization and rapid prototyping. They focus primarily on structure and functionality rather than visual details. Now let's move on to mid-fidelity. These wireframes provide a more detailed representation of the design compared to low-fidelity wireframes. They incorporate a moderate level of visual elements and content such as text labels, basic typography, and sometimes even simple icons or graphics. Mid-fidelity wireframes help designers to get a better sense of the layout, hierarchy, and interaction patterns within the interface. And finally, we have the high-fidelity wireframes. These wireframes closely resemble the final visual design, incorporating more realistic visual elements, colors, typography, and content. High-fidelity wireframes are often used in the later stages of the design process when the overall structure and layout have been finalized, and designers want to communicate the visual details more accurately. They provide a clear representation of the final product, helping stakeholders visualize the user experience more effectively. Depending on the type of project you are working on and depending on the complexity of that project, you may choose between these types of wireframes. Sometimes you may use all of them, sometimes you may use only the low fidelity and high fidelity, and sometimes you may only need to use the low fidelity wireframe. I personally most of the time only use a low fidelity wireframe to just define the layout of my project and the placement of my elements. So let's create one together. First, let's create a page here. I'm going to rename it to wireframe. And here I'm going to hit A on my keyboard. And from here, let's create a desktop frame. All right. Now let's increase the height because we know we are going to design a landing page and it's a long page usually. So I'm going to increase the height. Keep in mind that for creating a wireframe, you can actually use some templates and some resources on the Figma community page, but I'm going to keep it simple and we are just going to use simple shapes to just define the placement of our elements and roughly define the size of our elements. All right, so let's start at the top. Usually at the top of our page, we need to have a nav bar, right? If I go to this mood board and I zoom in, as you can see, almost all of these landing pages have a nav bar with some menu items, right? So here we have a nav bar, here we have a nav bar, but the placement of the menu items may vary. Here the menu items are center aligned, here they are left aligned, here again they are center aligned. It really doesn't matter and it really comes to your preference. I think this one looks good, but you may go with this one as well. So on the left side, we need to have a logo, a few menu items right next to the logo. And on the right side, we need to have our CTAs or call to action buttons. All right, so let's get back to the wireframe page. And here, I'm gonna draw a frame like this. And I'm gonna name it navbar. And then I'm going to head over to the field section and I'm going to open up the style page. Since we have all these color styles, we can actually use them. I'm going to head over to the slate. You can use the gray or zinc as well, but it's better to use neutral colors. I'm going to use the slate. And for the nav bar, let's use something like 50. That's fine, something light. And I'm going to zoom in. Here we need to have the logo. For the logo, just create a frame. Something like this. Hold down the shift key to create a perfect square and let's add a field to it. Again, go to slate, this time something darker, maybe slate 500 like this. I can make it rounded as well. Let's set the corner radius to 12. So this is going to be our logo. We can align it to the center. Then we need to have a few menu items, maybe 4. For the menu items, we can simply duplicate this frame. Move it to the right side. To duplicate, just hit Ctrl D or Command D. Now I'm going to hold down the Alt and Control keys on my keyboard or Alt and Command keys. Left click and drag to shrink it, just like that. So this is going to be the first menu item. I'm going to duplicate it, move it right next to this one, duplicate it 2 more times. So here we have our menu items. Now on the right side, I'm going to place 2 buttons. If I go to mood board, here you see we have docs, sign in, start for free. Here we have sign up, get a demo. Here we have login, request a demo. What else? Here we have login, try it for free. And here login, try it for free as well, and login and sign up. So I think maybe we can just put a sign in button and a start for free button. For the buttons, I'm going to select this frame 1, duplicate it, move it to the right side and just make it smaller like that and increase the width. Okay, this is going to be our start for free button. I'm going to place it on the right side and it should be quite dark. Okay, since it's a very important button, it should grab the user's attention. So we need to change the color shade here to maybe slate 800, something like this. Now I'm going to duplicate it, move it to the left, make it a bit smaller. This is going to be our sign in button. For this one, we can use another type of button, maybe an outline button instead of a solid button. So I'm going to remove the fill and instead I'm going to add a stroke to it. And this time again, slate maybe 500. Like this. Don't worry about the colors at the moment, we will change them later. Alright, so basically our navbar is ready. You don't need to worry about the alignment, we just want to roughly define the layout of our page. Now that our navbar is ready, let's move on to the hero section. Well, the hero section is the section right below the navbar. So here is called the hero section, and the reason it's called hero is because this is the most important section of any website or any landing page. This is the section that should grab the user's attention immediately, like within 2 seconds. Otherwise, the user is gonna leave. So we need to spend so much time to make it look beautiful. Let's see what kind of layout is better for our project. Well, according to our project brief, this Polio CRM is already designed and it's already built. So we have some screenshots of this product. Therefore, I think if we align everything to the center and just use such a layout like this center aligned layout, it would make sense. We could also use this layout to align the text on the left and put a screenshot on the right, but I prefer this layout. Here, as you can see, for this project, it also works very well. Let me see what else we have. Here we also have this center aligned. I really like this layout, and right underneath this screenshot we can put some client logos. Here again the same kind of layout. So let's go with the center aligned layout. What do we need first? Well, first we need to have a very large headline that defines this product. So I'm gonna go to wireframe and I'm just gonna create a frame right here. Let's give it a feel. Again, let's go to the slate, and this headline should be large and dark. Okay, for the main headline, you should always use a large font size and also a dark color. So I'm gonna go with slate 900, something like this. Let's align it to the center. I'm gonna increase its height a bit and let's make it rounded. Like this. I think one line would be enough. We can adjust it later depending on our needs, but something like this looks quite good. Let me align it to the center and I'm going to rename it to heading. Right underneath, we need to have a subheading or a description. If I go to the moodboard page, here as you can see, all these landing pages have a description right under their headline. It should be brief, but it should be there. So I'm going to duplicate this frame, move it down, make it a little bit smaller like this. I'm going to hold down the Alt key on my keyboard to make it a bit smaller like that. And it should be lighter as well. Remember, we are defining the hierarchy of our page as well by changing these shades and these tints. So I'm going to change it to slate 500. Now I'm going to duplicate it again, move it down, because for the description, we usually need 2 or 3 lines of text. Hold down the Alt key and just make it a little bit smaller. Now I'm going to select these two, move them a little bit down, and also group them, hit Ctrl G or Command G, and I'm going to rename it to description. Okay, what else do we need? Well, right under the description, we usually put our CTA buttons. So here, as you can see, we have Get Started. Here we have Sign Up with Google, Book a Demo. Let's see. Here we also have 2 buttons. Try Retool for free, Watch Demo. Again, Get Started, it's free, see what's new. So for this project, I'm gonna also place 2 buttons, maybe one demo button and one start for free button. So what we can do is select these 2 buttons in the navbar. I'm gonna select them both, hold down the Shift key to select them both, duplicate them and move them down here. I'm gonna group them and I'm gonna call it Actions. Let's align it to the center. Don't worry about the spacing at the moment. Now it's time to place our large screenshot, like what we see on all these landing pages. Here we have a large screenshot of the product. Here we also have a large screenshot of the product. So let's put a large screenshot here. I'm going to create a frame, a very large frame like this. And I'm going to add a field to it. Let's add a slate 200 to it, like that. I can make it a bit rounded as well. I'm going to increase the corner radius to 4. And let's align it to the center. Okay, so far so good. What else do we need for our hero section? Well, right under this screenshot, we usually place some client logos. If I go to the mood board, here you can see that the designer placed a few client logos here as well. And also here we have some client logos. It's a good practice because you can gain your users' trust this way. So here we need to have a very small text. I'm going to select this heading frame, duplicate it, move it down like this, make it a bit smaller like that. And it shouldn't be that dark, so I'm going to change it to slate 500 maybe. And I'm going to rename it to title. And right underneath, we need to place a few logos. Usually I place 5 logos here. You can go up to 6 if you want to have 1 row of logos. But if you have to place like 12 different logos, you should place them in 2 different rows. Keep that in mind. Otherwise, when it comes to responsiveness, it wouldn't work. So let's create a frame. I'm going to draw a square. Hold down the shift key to draw a square like this. And I'm going to add a field to it. Again, slate maybe 100 like this. And let's make it circular. Duplicate it, hit Ctrl D or Command D, move it to the right side, duplicate it once again, and 2 more times. Now I'm going to select them all, hold down the shift key and just click on them one by one and just adjust the spacing between them like this to make sure that everything is aligned roughly. Now I'm going to group them and just call it client logos. Alright, so far so good. Our hero section is ready. We can just select all these elements, excluding the nav bar, and just group them. Hit Ctrl G or Command G, and I'm going to call it hero section. Okay, what else do we need? Right under the hero section, we can place many different sections, many different types of sections, but usually we place the features section that describes the main features of this product. So here, if we analyze all these landing pages, you see right under this hero section, we have 3 main features of this product. What about here? Here we have a few cards and then we have a few features. Here again, we have 8 different features of this product. And it makes sense because we want to make sure the user gets what he or she is looking for. Alright, but how should we place our features? How should we design them? There are many different ways and there is not one single answer to this question. Here, as you can see, the designer placed 1 image. So we have the visual, we have 1 large title and a description. What about here? Here we have a few cards. We have 1 large title, the description, and an action button. What about here? Here we have an icon, a title, a description. Again, an icon, a title, and a description. I think this kind of layout looks good if you just place 1 icon and underneath 1 title and a short description. So I'm going to go to wireframe, and here I'm going to place a text. So I'm going to select this title. To directly select any element inside the group, you can hold down the Control or Command key and just hover over it and just click on it, okay? I'm gonna copy it, hit Control C or Command C and paste it somewhere else, move it down. Let's make it a little bit smaller, like this. Now I'm gonna duplicate it, move it down. This is gonna be the supporting text. And this one is going to be the main heading. So let's make it larger like that. And let's make it darker as well. So slate 900. Now we need the description as well. So I'm going to duplicate it, move it down, make it smaller like this, like what we did in the hero section. You can go ahead and copy and paste them here, but I'm going to create them quickly. I'm going to change the color to slate 500, duplicate it and make it a bit smaller like this. And right underneath, I'm going to place 6 different features. So basically, I'm going to create a grid with 2 rows and 3 columns. For each feature, I'm going to have 1 icon, 1 title, and 1 description. So for the icon, I'm going to select this frame here. I'm going to copy it and paste it outside this hero section. going to bring it down here and let's make it a bit smaller. Now I'm going to need a text layer. I'm going to select this one, duplicate it, bring it right here. Let's make it a bit smaller, a little bit darker, so Slate 900. And I'm going to duplicate it, move it down. This one is going to be the description, so let's make it a bit longer and duplicate it, move it down. This one should be shorter, like this. And I'm going to change their color to Slate 500. Let's align them to the center and I'm going to group them. And this one is going to be named feature. And inside this circle, we will place an icon. So now I'm going to duplicate this feature 2 times. I'm going to select them all and just adjust the spacing between them to align everything like this. And just duplicate them. Hit Ctrl or Command D and move them down. And we'll get this clean grid of features. Now we can select all these elements and group them and rename it to features section. Let's move this section down a bit. Okay, what else? Well, right under this features section, I'm going to place a CTA section or a call to action section. What's a call to action section? It's basically a section that asks the user to take an action. It could ask the user to enter his or her email address in exchange for a free ebook or just creating a free account or getting a demo. For this project, I'm going to create a CTA section that asks the user to start a 30-day free trial. You usually see the CTA section right above the footer like this, ready to get started, request a demo. Let's see, here we also have this one, schedule onboarding. Here we also have one, but sometimes it's fine to have 2 CTA sections on one page. So I'm going to go to wireframe. And for this section, I'm going to need a title, a supporting text, and 2 buttons. So you know what? I'm going to duplicate this features section, hit Ctrl D or Command D, move it down. Let's rename it to CTA section. I'm going to get rid of all these features. I'm going to select them, hit delete on my keyboard. I also don't need this text. I'm going to remove it. I have the title, I have the supporting text, maybe only 1 line of supporting text. We don't need 2 lines here. And we also need 2 buttons. So you know what? Let's select these 2 buttons. We have this actions group. I'm going to copy it and just paste it somewhere around here. And let's align these 2 to the center. We can group them and just call it the CTA section. All right, our CTA section is also ready. What should we place underneath? So here we have this features section that briefly describes the features, the main features of this product. However, we also need to explain the most important features of this product to the user, usually 3 to 4 different features. And for this second feature section, we need to include a screenshot of the product for each feature, like what you see here. So if I go to my mood board, you will see that each feature has a screenshot. You see that? This one. Here we also have a screenshot, again a screenshot, again a screenshot. But what about the layout of this second features section? Well, I'm going to have the title, the supporting text, and also this small text above the title. But as for the main features, let's see what kind of layout would be great to have. Well, we can create a simple layout like this. It would work, but I think it's quite simple. Let's see what we have here. I really like this layout. Here we have a few different cards with different sizes. So it's basically a grid of cards. This one looks good. What about here? I really like this one. It's very clean. You know what? Let's create a grid like this, but instead of having one large card right here, we can put a medium-sized card and a small card next to each other, and then just duplicate them and put them in the second row and just change their place. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to go to wireframe. First, let me select these text. I'm going to select all these text layers like that. I'm going to copy them, paste them, move them here. Let me increase the height of this desktop frame like this. So for the grid, I want to create a frame like this, okay, a medium-sized frame. Let's make it rounded, maybe 12. And I'm going to add a field to it, maybe Slate 50, okay. Then I'm going to duplicate it move it to the right, and make it a bit smaller, like this. Now I'm gonna select them both. I'm gonna duplicate them, move them down, and I'm gonna change their placement. So I'm gonna move this large one to the right and move the small one to the left, like this. I think it looks clean and modern. Okay, but what each of these cards should include? Each card should include an image, basically a screenshot of the product, a title, and a description. So here I'm gonna select this text, duplicate it, move it here. I'm gonna make it a bit longer and a bit taller, like this. Make it darker since it's gonna be our headline. I'm gonna duplicate it, move it down. Here we need a long description, or let's say a supporting text. This one should be Slate 500, and it can be 2 lines of text. That's fine. Something like this. And here I'm gonna place a large image. So I'm gonna create a frame like this, and I'm gonna add a field to it. Let's say Slate 200. All right, it looks very good. Now I'm gonna select all these elements, copy them, select this frame, paste them here. Let's change their alignment. I'm gonna make this description a bit shorter, like that. And also this screenshot should be much smaller, something like this. Now I'm gonna select all these elements again, copy them, select this frame, paste them inside. Let's select these elements inside this smaller card, copy them, and paste them right here. All right, our second feature section is also ready. Now I'm gonna select all these cards, move them up a little bit, and let's rename them to card. So I'm gonna rename this to card, copy it, rename this one to card as well, and this one. And let's select them all, group them, and just call it features section. Yes, I know we have another feature section, but it's fine. All right, what else do we need? Well, right underneath this feature section, I'm gonna place an integration section. So for the integration section, I'm gonna have all these elements, all these text. Let me select them all. I'm gonna copy them. Let's paste them somewhere else. I'm gonna move them down like this. And then right underneath, we need to place a few application logos or a few website logos. Here, if I go to my mood board, let's see what we can find. All right, there it is. As you can see here, we have an integration section. Connect your app with the tools you love. So there is a title, a description, and also a few logos. So here I'm gonna place the product logo, basically the polio logo. Let me select it in the nav bar, copy it, and just paste it here. I'm gonna place it right here. And then underneath, I'm gonna place a few logos. I'm not sure about the number of logos we are gonna place at the moment, and it doesn't matter. We just need to roughly define their placement. I'm gonna duplicate this frame, move it down, make it completely rounded, change its color to something lighter, like Slate 100, and just move it to the left, and just duplicate it. I'm gonna duplicate it and put it right here and duplicate it a few times. Something like that. Looks very good. So this is gonna be our integration section. Let's select them all, group them, and just call it integrations section. Next, I'm gonna place the testimonial section. For the testimonial section, again, I'm gonna have all these elements. So let's select them all, copy them, paste them. I'm gonna move them down, and then I'm gonna create a card for each testimonial. If I go to my mood board, here, let's see what we have. All right, we have loved by developers. We have a few testimonial cards. What about here? Here we have, again, a few testimonial cards. These are quite large with large images. I don't like this layout. What about here? Again, here we have a few testimonial cards. I think this layout looks good. So let's go to the wireframe page, and here I'm going to create a frame like this. Basically, I'm going to create 3 columns of cards. So let's make it a bit rounded. I'm going to increase the corner radius to 12. I'm going to add a field to it, maybe Slate 100. And in each card, we need to have a profile image. So we need to have a circle. Let's create a circle using a frame. We just need to draw a simple frame, make it completely rounded, and just add a field to it, maybe slate 300. We need to have the name, the job title, and the testimonial text. So let's create a frame here for our name, make it rounded, add a field to it, slate 900, duplicate it, move it down. This one is going to be the job title. This one is going to be a bit bigger, and this one should be lighter. So maybe slate 400. Now let's duplicate it, move it down, and here we need to have a long paragraph. So let's increase its width, duplicate it, move it down, and just adjust its length like that to indicate that this is a paragraph. All right, now I'm gonna rename it to testimonial card, and let's just duplicate it. I'm gonna duplicate this card twice. Now I'm gonna select them all and duplicate them. Move them down and duplicate them once again. Now I'm gonna select them all, group them, and let's just call it testimonial section. Okay, what else do we need? Right below this testimonial section, I'm gonna place a frequently asked questions section, FAQ. So let me select this desktop frame and just increase its height. For this FAQ section, I'm gonna have a title, a subtitle, but I don't need this text here. So I'm gonna select this large title and the supporting text underneath, copy them, and let's paste them, move them down. And here I'm going to create an accordion card so that each question can be expandable and collapsible. For that, I'm going to need the question itself. So let me just duplicate this one, move it down, and I'm going to make it a little bit smaller like this. Right underneath, we need to have the answer. So I'm going to select this one, duplicate it, and move it down here. Let's make it longer. Usually the answer is longer. Let's duplicate it, move it down, and something like this looks good. And on the right side, I'm going to place a down arrow icon so that the user can expand it and collapse it. So let's create a frame like this, a very small one, and just add a field to it. It can be slate 500. I'm going to place it somewhere around here and just make it completely rounded. Now for the other questions, I'm going to select them all. Let's group them and let's call it question. I'm going to duplicate it, move it down, and for this one, it should be collapsed. So I'm going to remove the answer. We just need to see the question, and we need to see the icon as well. And let's duplicate it a few times. All right, this section is also ready. Let's select them all, group them, and just name it FAQ section. What else do we need? Right here, I'm going to place a CTA section again, and we already designed it. I'm just going to select this CTA section, duplicate it, and move it down. And finally, right after this last CTA section, we need to place the footer. For the footer, I'm going to create a frame, a large frame like this. And let's rename it to footer. I'm going to add a field to it. It can be slate 25 like this. And basically, I'm going to create 5 columns of links. If I go to the mood board and take a look at these footers, you see we have simple columns of links. Let's check out other footers. Here we have the same footer. Again, different columns of links like that. So it's going to be quite simple. Let's select this title, copy it, paste it here. This is going to be the header. I'm going to make it a bit smaller, but it should be dark. So maybe change the color style to slate 700 like this. Now I'm going to duplicate it, move it down, and change the color back to slate 500 and just duplicate it a few times. Now I'm going to select them all, group them, and just call it column. And let's make this one a bit longer like this. Now I'm going to select this column and just duplicate it a few times. So in total, we'll need to get 5 different columns. You can have 4, 5, or even 3 depending on your needs. And finally, right here, I'm going to place the company's logo. So let's go ahead and select it. It's right here. I'm going to copy it, paste it here, make it very small like this. And on the other side, I'm going to place a copyright disclaimer. For that, I'm just going to need a text layer like this, copy it, paste it here. it should be quite small. So let's make it smaller. And our footer is also ready. All right, we have all the necessary sections. We have the nav bar, the hero section, the features section, integration section, etc. All right, guys, it was a long process, but it's gonna help us a lot when we start converting this wireframe to a high fidelity design. In the next video, we will create another wireframe for the tablet and the mobile version. So I'll see you there. Welcome back. In this video, we are going to continue working on our wireframe. Basically, the desktop version is ready. Now that the desktop version is ready, we need to create the tablet and the mobile version. So let's go ahead and duplicate this desktop version. I'm going to duplicate it and I'm going to rename it to tablet. And the first thing we need to do is decrease the width. I'm going to set the width to 744. And now we need to decide how our layout should change in the tablet breakpoint or in the tablet version. So I'm going to zoom in here. Usually for the tablet and the mobile versions, since we don't have enough space to fit many elements, we eliminate the unnecessary elements, especially the menu items. This is a very common design pattern. I'm sure you've seen it before. When you open up a website on tablet, you will see that all these menu items are gone, and instead you'll see a hamburger menu button on the right side, on mobile as well. Let me show you an example. I'm going to open up apple.com, and if I inspect it, I'm going to inspect it here. You'll see at the moment we are previewing the desktop version. Now I'm going to decrease its width like this. We still see all the menu items, but at some point, those menu items are gone. Now we are in the tablet breakpoint, and instead we have this hamburger menu icon. And if I click on it, all those menu items appear. The same thing is true for the mobile version, just like this. So here, the first thing I'm gonna do is get rid of all these text layers. We don't need them. Now I'm gonna select the nav bar frame and just decrease its width, move the logo to the left, and on the right side, we don't need to have those action buttons or those CTAs as well. So I'm gonna get rid of them. We don't need them. Instead, we need to place a hamburger menu icon. For that, let's duplicate this frame, move it to the right. I'm gonna scale it down a bit. And also let's change its color to something darker like this. All right, what about the hero section? Well, first, I'm gonna align it here perfectly. And since it's a group, if I change its width, look what happens to the elements inside. You see, they shrink because those elements inside all have constraints, but it's fine. It doesn't matter. I'm gonna just change the width to 744. And next I'm gonna select the elements inside, just move them around. Maybe I can adjust the width of these text layers. I'm gonna hold down the Option key or Alt key on my keyboard and just make them longer to take up the whole available space on the tablet version. Let's align this actions group to the center. I'm going to hold down the Option key on my keyboard or the Alt key and just increase its width. I'm going to align it to the center. As for the screenshot, I'm going to make sure that it takes up the whole available space with some margin around it, something like this. And the aspect ratio should be something like that. What about the client's logo? The same thing, they have been shrunk, so we need to select them all like this. And we need to click on this icon to unlink the width and height, and just change the width to 80. I'm gonna align them to the center, change the spacing a little bit. I'm gonna put the title right here, align it to the center. For the tablet version, we can do something else. We can add one more logo here, one more client logo, and instead of having one row of logos, we can have 2 rows of logos. So in total, we can have 6 different logos. Let's do that. I'm gonna select this and this, move them down, select this one and duplicate it, move it to the right. All right, good. Now I'm going to select the client logos group, and here I'm going to adjust the spacing between them like this. Okay, so far so good. Our hero section is ready. Now let's move on to the features section. I'm going to ungroup all these elements. I'm going to right click here, click on ungroup. Okay, they are now all ungrouped. Now I'm going to reposition them according to my needs. So I'm going to select all these elements, align them to the center like that. And I'm going to get rid of all these features except one of them. Let's place it right here. I'm gonna select this circle here, unlink its width and height, and just change the width to 50. Align it with these text like this. But here I'm gonna change the layout. So basically, instead of having 2 rows of features, I'm gonna have 6 rows of features. So basically, in each row, I only wanna display one single feature that takes up the whole available width of my screen. So to do that, I'm gonna select all these text, hold down the Option or Alt key on my keyboard, and just make them longer, like that. Now I'm gonna select this feature group, and just align it to the center like this, and I'm gonna duplicate it 5 times. Now I'm gonna select all these elements and group them again and just call it features section. All right, cool. Now let's move on to the CTA section. I'm gonna move all these sections down. Everything is disorganized. It's normal. Don't worry about it. I'm gonna just increase the height of this frame like this. Just move everything down to make room for the CTA section. Okay, so for the CTA section, let's align everything to the center like this. And again, I'm gonna select the CTA section inside this, align it to the center, and these also should be aligned to the center like this. Next, we have the second features section. Since we don't have enough space on the tablet and mobile breakpoints to keep this layout, let's have one card in each row. So I'm gonna place this right here. I'm gonna ungroup everything. I'm gonna select these, move them to the center like that. Then I'm gonna place this card right here, and I can expand it. I'm gonna hold down the Alt or Option key on my keyboard and try to expand it like this and move it to the right. I can just move the image to the right as well. And let's get rid of these cards, these additional ones, and just duplicate this one 3 times like this. Now we can adjust the size of these images for these cards. This one can have a smaller image. This one can have a larger image. We can adjust its position later when we convert this wireframe to a high fidelity design, but for now, let's leave it as is. Next, we need to move on to the integration section, but first, let me group all these cards and all these elements again, since we ungrouped them, and I'm gonna call it features section. As for the integration section, again, ungroup them, align everything to the center, like this one as well. I'm gonna get rid of a few of these logos since we don't have enough space, and just move these logos to the left, like this, and that's all. Let's select them all, group them, and just call it integrations section. Next, we have the testimonial section. Here, again, we need to change the layout. We don't have enough space to fit 3 different cards, basically 3 different columns. So instead, we need to have 2 columns. So I'm gonna ungroup them, and then I'm gonna select these elements, align them to the center, like this. I'm gonna get rid of these cards outside, just remove them, and select these cards, move them up, like this. Hold down the Shift key, select these elements, and group them, and let's call it testimonials section. Next, we have the FAQ section. So let's move it down. I'm gonna ungroup it like this and align everything to the center. Again, select the questions like this. Hold down the Option or Alt key and just shrink them. Okay, looks good. We just need to select these icons here. I'm gonna hold down the Shift and Control key on my keyboard to select them all, unlink their width and height, and just change the width to 19. Now we can select them all again, group them, and just call it FAQ section. Here we have another CTA section. I'm gonna remove it and just select this CTA section, duplicate it, and bring it down, just like this. And finally, we have the footer. We need to change the layout of our footer as well for the tablet. So I'm gonna select the tablet frame. Let's increase its height a bit. And then I'm gonna select the footer. Let's move it down. I'm gonna decrease its width like this. And we need to change the layout here. Since we cannot fit 5 different columns in one row, we need to create 2 more rows. I'm going to remove this column outside. In each row, we are going to place 2 columns. So I'm going to get rid of this one and this one as well. Let's move this column to the right, somewhere around here. Increase the height of this footer. Here we have the logo and the copyright disclaimer. Let's move it down. I'm going to select the columns, duplicate them like this, bring them down. I'm going to duplicate this last one and bring it down and place it right here. And here we need to place the logo and the copyright disclaimer. All right, good. Our tablet wireframe is also ready. We changed the layout of our sections. Now we need to move on to the mobile breakpoint. So I'm going to duplicate this tablet one. Let's rename it to mobile. And I'm going to change its width to 375, just like this. I'm going to select the nav bar and change its width, but when I do that, as you can see, this icon stays right here. That's not what I want. So let's set its constraints here. I'm going to select this frame too, set its constraints to top right. Now if I select this nav bar and I try to shrink it, it stays right here. And I need to move it to the right a little bit, move the logo to the left. Here the hero section is way too big, so let's ungroup everything. I'm going to select all these text, shrink them, hold down the Option or Alt key, align everything to the center, move these buttons to the left, and then just decrease the width of this screenshot and make sure that the aspect ratio is correct, like this, because we are going to place a desktop screenshot here. Then we need to place the logos. So I'm going to move this title up, put it right at the center. So here, again, we need to change the layout. So we still need to have 6 different logos, but instead of having 2 rows, we are going to have 3 rows. And in each row, we need to have 2 columns. So I'm going to move it up. Let's adjust the spacing between them. Okay. I'm going to get rid of these 2. And I'm gonna duplicate this one, move it down, duplicate this one, move it down. Okay, let's place them inside. Select the client logos and align it to the center, just like this. Now we can select them all. Click on this icon, more options, hit tidy up, and now we can adjust the spacing between them. Something like this looks good. Now we need to select all these elements, group them again, and just call it hero section. Let's move on to the features section now. This one is going to be easy. We just need to shrink it. I'm going to hold down the Option key on my keyboard and just shrink it, just like this. The only thing that we need to change is the width of these circles. So I'm going to select these frames and set the width to 50 and also align them to the center. All right, let's move this features section up a little bit. Here we have the CTA section. Again, let's ungroup them. I'm going to shrink these like that, move these action buttons to the center, select them all, group them, and just call it CTA section. Next, we have the features section, the second one. I'm going to ungroup them, select these text, shrink them like this. Hold down the Option key or Alt key to shrink them, by the way. Let's select these cards. Hold down the Option key or Alt key and just try to shrink them. I'm going to get rid of all these cards to set the alignment here properly. I'm going to select this image inside, make it smaller like this. These texts inside, make them smaller, realign them. And now I can select this card and just duplicate it 3 times. Now we can select them all, group them, and just call it features section. Okay, now let's move on to the integration section. The layout should be intact. We just need to ungroup them, move them to the center, and I'm going to shrink them. Hold down the Option key or Alt key, shrink them like this. Let's get rid of 2 of these logos. Now I'm going to select these logos and just unlink their width and height and set the width to 70, and I can adjust the spacing here. Let's select the logo, unlink the width and height, set the width to 70, and align it to the center. Now I'm going to select them all, group them, and let's call it integration section. Next, we have the testimonials. Here on mobile, we need to eliminate a few of these testimonials since we don't have enough space. So let's just keep 4 testimonial cards. I'm going to ungroup them. I'm going to increase the height of this mobile frame like this. and move everything down to make room for the testimonial section. And now I'm going to select all these text, shrink them. I'm going to get rid of some of these cards and just duplicate this one, move it down. Good. Select them all, group them, and just call it testimonials section. Now let's move on to the FAQ section. Here, again, we need to ungroup them, select these text, shrink them, hold down the Option or Alt key, move them up, select the questions, hold down the Option or Alt key, and shrink them. Now we need to select these two frames and just increase their width. Select these icons as well and just change their width to 19. And also these frames can be enlarged. Let's select them all, group them, and just call it FAQ section. Next, we need to have another CTA section. I'm going to remove it and let's copy this one and bring it down here. Make sure that it's aligned to the center. And finally, we need to have the footer. The layout should be intact. We just need to change the spacing between these columns. So I'm going to select the footer frame, decrease its width, select all the columns, hold down the Option or Alt key on your keyboard and just shrink them like this. Move them to the right and a bit up. And here we need to have the logo and the copyright disclaimer. I'm gonna just change their layout. So I'm gonna place this copyright disclaimer right underneath the logo. Okay, let's move the footer up and just select the mobile frame and decrease its height. And just like that, our mobile wireframe is also ready and we are done with the wireframing process. We created 3 different wireframes with different layouts, and now it's time to start converting these low fidelity wireframes to a high fidelity design. So I'll see you in the next video. Before we start designing the Polio landing page, there is one more thing we need to discuss, and that is the box model. What's the box model? Imagine you're looking at a web page on your screen. The box model is a way to represent and understand how elements on a web page are structured and how they interact with each other. In web design, every element on a web page, such as text, images, buttons, or containers, is essentially contained within a rectangular box. Yes, every single element. This box has 4 main components: content, padding, border, and margin. Let's break them down. The content refers to the actual content of the element, such as the text inside a paragraph or the image itself. It's the information you want to display. The padding is the space between the content and the border. It helps to create some breathing room around the content. And the border is the line or outline that surrounds the padding and content. It can be solid, dashed, or any other style you choose. It defines the boundary of the box. And finally, the margin is the space outside the border. It provides a gap between the elements and other elements on the page. Margins help with creating spacing and maintaining visual separation between elements. Now let me show you a few real-world examples to see how the box model works. Let's check out Apple's website. What do you see here? You may say we have a nav bar and then we have this large hero section with a heading and a subheading, 2 text buttons, and a large photo. Now let's analyze how these elements are styled and positioned on this page. What we have here is basically boxes inside other boxes. But you might say, alright, this title, these text buttons, and this image are not inside boxes. What are you talking about? Well, they are inside boxes, but those boxes are hidden. You don't believe me? Let me prove that to you. If I just right click here and click on inspect, this panel opens on the right side, showing me the HTML and CSS code of this page. Relax, we are not going to talk about coding. I'm just going to show you how the front-end developer structured this website. Here, if I click on this little icon and I hover over these elements, they will be highlighted. And as you can see, these elements are all placed inside hidden boxes. Now let's check out Twitter. Here you will see the same thing. We have many elements that are placed inside boxes, and those boxes are inside larger boxes. That's basically how a web page is structured. But why are we talking about this? Should we know how to code? Nope, not at all. As a UI UX designer, you don't need to know how to code, but you need to know and understand the medium you're designing for. You need to know how to structure your project properly so that when you hand it over to the developer, he or she understands what's going on, because at the end of the day, your project needs to be converted to code by a developer. In the upcoming videos, we will use the box model to design our project, and you'll see its real power. See you in the next one. Welcome back. In this video, we are going to start converting our wireframe to a high fidelity design. So let's get into it. First of all, I'm going to open up this design system file, and here I'm going to add one more page, and I'm going to call it workspace. This is basically where we are going to design our project. Let me move it down and place it right under our wireframe page. Now I'm going to go to the wireframe, and from here I'm going to select this desktop wireframe. I'm going to copy it, hit Ctrl C or Command C, head over to the workspace page and paste it right here, so we can easily check out our layout and all the elements we already defined. Now we need to create a desktop frame. Right next to it, I'm going to hit A on my keyboard, and from here I'm going to go to the desktop category and let's choose this desktop frame, just like this. Always start your web design using this particular width, 1440. All right, so here we have our desktop frame. I'm going to rename it to desktop. And now we are going to start converting our wireframe to a high fidelity design. Before we start, I'm going to mention a few points. For this project, I'm going to use the black primary color as our accent color based on the project brief. If you remember, the primary brand color of this company, the polio company, is black, and I'm going to use it as my accent color. Therefore, I think it makes sense to have a light theme for this project. So the background of our homepage can be white, and then we can put contrasting colors on top of that. If I head over to the colors page here, for this project, I'm going to use this gray color palette. Okay, basically the only color I'm going to use for this project is this gray color palette. And as for the accent color, I'm going to use this gray 900. For your project, you can define your primary and your accent colors differently, but for this project, I prefer to use this gray color palette because I think it's elegant, it's clean, and it also goes well with the primary brand color, which is black. But you might ask, what if my primary color was something else, like blue or red or orange or any other color or purple? Well, in that case, just use a grayscale. We already talked about it in the previous chapters. You know why? Because we want to define a good visual hierarchy. And once your design is done, then you can go ahead and change all those colors. Even if I didn't want to use this gray color palette for this project, I would still start with this gray color palette to just define the hierarchy of my elements properly. Then I could go ahead and just change all the colors with my primary and accent color palettes. Okay, all right, let's head over to the workspace page and let's start designing our navbar. Well, as you've learned in the previous video, we are going to use the box model to design our project. So everything should be placed inside a box, and we also want to make our design responsive. So we need to use auto layout as much as we can. And in this project, I'm going to show you how to utilize auto layout and constraints in Figma like a pro so you can make everything responsive. You don't need to set the spacing manually anymore. You can systematically design a project, and that's exactly what we are going to do. So let's get started. First of all, I'm going to create a section here for our navbar. To do that, I'm going to hit A on my keyboard to select the frame tool, and I'm going to draw a frame just like this. The width of this frame should be 1440, so it should take up the whole available width of this frame. And let me rename it to navbar. This is going to be our navbar section. As for the height, I'm going to set it to 80. 80 is a good height for navbars usually, and it's also an increment of 4 since we are using a 4-point grid system. Okay, now that our navbar frame is created, I'm gonna add auto layout to it to make it an auto layout frame. So I'm gonna hit Shift and A, and as you can see, its icon changed here, which indicates that this is an auto layout frame now. And here we have all these auto layout settings. All right, before we move on, I'm gonna select this desktop frame and I'm gonna add one of our layout grids to this desktop frame, the one that we already prepared here on the grids and spacing page. So I'm gonna select it, I'm gonna head over to layout grid and let's click on this icon. And from here, I'm gonna choose desktop because basically for this desktop frame, for this 1440 pixels width, we need to use a fluid grid. So we need to use this one. I'm gonna add it to my frame. And now we can select our nav bar here. And the first thing we need to do is set all these values here. First of all, I'm gonna change its vertical resizing option here from hog content to fixed height, just like this. And also the horizontal one to fixed width as well, because we don't want it to hog the content inside as soon as we start adding elements to it. And the height should always be fixed for the nav bar. All right, let's set these values. Do you know what value I should use for the horizontal padding? Nope. Well, actually here we need to use 150. Why? Because when we were creating this layout grid, if you remember, we used a 150 pixel margin. Let me show that to you. Here, if I select this desktop, and if I go to the grid settings, here, as you can see, our margin is set to 150. So we need to make sure that we push the content inside this nav bar towards the center. So we don't want to place anything outside this layout grid. That's why we set the horizontal padding to 150. The vertical one doesn't matter since we used a vertical resizing option. So I'm going to set it to 0. All right, now inside this navbar frame, we need to create a container. Always create a container inside your section. If you organize your project like this, when you hand it over to the developer, he or she is going to love you because they can easily understand the structure of your project. So here, while this navbar frame is selected, I'm going to create another frame inside. I'm going to hit A on my keyboard to select the frame tool, left click and drag to draw a frame inside. Don't worry about its size. Let me rename it to container. And now we need to add auto layout to this container as well. So I'm going to hit Shift and A, and there it is. Here we have an auto layout frame, and this container should take up the whole available width within its parent, which is this navbar frame. Okay, since we already set the horizontal padding, we don't need to worry about the left and right margins here. So if we want this container to take up the whole available width, you know what to do. You just need to select it. You need to head over to the resizing options here. And from here, I'm going to set the horizontal resizing option to fill container. And as you can see now, it takes up the whole available width within its parent container. And it can't go further because we already set the padding here. All right, I hope it makes sense. Okay, now I'm going to select the nav bar and I'm going to align everything to the center because we want our container to be centered as well. Now we are ready to start adding elements to this nav bar. Let's see what we need. If we take a look at our wireframe, you see that we need to place a logo on the left side, then a few menu items, and on the right side, we need to have our action buttons. So let's start with the logo. I already prepared some assets for you. If you just download the asset folder, inside, you'll see a few folders. You will see logos and screenshots. I want you to open up the logos folder, and here you can find 3 different folders: Polio, integrations, and clients. I'm going to open up the Polio folder, and then you'll see an SVG logo inside. Now I want you to drag and drop it inside your container, just like this. If you couldn't drop it inside precisely, that's also fine. Let me show you how to do it. You can just drag and drop it anywhere inside your project. Then you can hit Ctrl X or Command X to cut it. Then in the layers list, select your container and paste it here. Hit Ctrl V or Command V. Just like this, it will be added to your container. All right, here we have our logo. Let me rename it to logo. And I'm going to zoom in. Here we have an issue. As you can see, this logo is not aligned with our first column. How can we fix that? Yes, you're right. We need to select this container and we need to get rid of these horizontal and vertical padding. We don't need them. I'm gonna set them to 0 and 0. And as you can see, our logo is now perfectly aligned with our layout grid. Okay, what else do we need? Next, we need a few menu items. So let's start creating them. I'm gonna hit T on my keyboard to select the text tool, left click somewhere inside our container. Everything moves, that's fine, because our container is hugging the content inside. And when I create something inside, it tries to hug the content, but don't worry about it. It will be fixed. And here I'm gonna start typing home, which is our first link, but it's way too big, isn't it? So I'm gonna select it, and from my text style here, I'm gonna change its text style to text medium semi-bold. Here, as you can see, I have text medium, which is basically our base size. I'm gonna set it to text medium semi-bold, which is a good size for navbar links. And as for the color, I'm gonna select it, and from the color styles, I'm gonna scroll down. From the gray color palette, I'm gonna choose gray 400. All right, since we are picking the colors now, let's go ahead and check the contrast ratio of this color against this white background. Some designers prefer to check the design in terms of accessibility and contrast ratio once they're done with the design, but I prefer to do it while I'm designing. It's totally up to you. I'm gonna select this one, head over to the resources. From here, I'm gonna go to plugins, and I'm gonna look for this contrast plugin. I'm gonna run it. All right, as you can see, it passes all these tests. Don't worry about this one. It failed the AAA for normal text, but it's fine. The AA is the bare minimum. Okay, so far so good. Now I'm gonna duplicate it, hit Ctrl D or Command D 3 times, and let's change these text. Here, I'm gonna type customers. Of course, you need to name these links according to the project's requirements, but here, since it's a fictional project, I'm just going to name them based on my previous experience. You can also check out your mood board and see what kind of links these kind of projects have. So here, I'm going to change it to features, and for the last one, let's change it to pricing. All right, our menu items are ready, but I'm not satisfied with the alignment. Are you? Well, let's fix that. So since we are using the box model here, now you know that to align everything and to specify the spacing between these elements, we need to put them inside a box. And that box is an auto layout frame. So whenever you can, make sure to use an auto layout frame to align everything. It's going to make your life much easier when you start changing the layout for the other breakpoints like the tablet or mobile. So here, I'm going to select them all. To select them all, you know what to do. Just hold down the Shift key on your keyboard and just left click on them one by one and hit Shift and A to put them inside an auto layout frame. All right, here I'm going to rename them to menu items. All right, the direction should be horizontal. It's fine. The only thing we need to change here is the horizontal space between items. What value should I put here? Well, obviously, we are using the 4-point grid system, right? So this value should be an increment of 4. So if I zoom in here, you see that 8 is not enough. If I go to 16, it's still too tight. I can go to 24, it's still not enough. But I think if I set it to 32, now we have enough breathing room between them. Make sure to only use the values we specified right here. For example, after 24, you can't go to 28. Just jump into 32, and after 32, jump into 40. All right, now we have another problem. We don't have enough spacing between the logo and this menu items frame. How can we fix that? Yes, you're right. We need to put these inside another box. So I'm gonna select them both, and I'm gonna hit Shift and A to put them inside an auto layout frame. I'm gonna hit Shift and A here, and let's call this content. Okay, first of all, let's change the alignment. Everything should be center aligned, so I'm gonna align everything to the center like this. And here, I'm gonna adjust the horizontal space between items. I think if we set it to 40, it would be enough. But why shouldn't we use 32 here? Since we have a text here in our logo, if we set it to 32 like this, users may think that this text is also a menu item. So it's better to separate them by increasing the space between these two items. If you remember, we talked about the law of proximity. So items that are placed next to each other are perceived as related. So we are going to create this separation by just increasing this value to 40. All right, so far so good. Our logo is created. Our menu items are ready. Now we need to create these two buttons. So how can we create a good button? Well, you might say that, all right, we can create a rectangle here like this, then put a text inside, and then we can just group them. You can, but it's not a good way because in that case, it wouldn't be responsive. So instead, you can create a text. I'm going to select the container, not the content, because we are going to put those buttons inside another frame later. So I don't want them to be placed inside this content frame. And I'm going to hit T on my keyboard to select the text tool, left click to create a text. Here I'm going to type sign in. The font size looks good. I'm just going to change the color. I'm going to change it to gray 400 like this. But this button should be an outline button, so we need to have a border around it. To do that, we can simply put it inside an auto layout frame to make it both responsive and just adjust its styling. So while it's selected, I'm going to hit Shift and A. As you can see now, it's inside an auto layout frame. And I'm going to rename it to button/sign in. And now I'm going to head over to the stroke section. And from here, I'm going to add a stroke to it. As for the color, I'm going to pick something light, maybe gray 200, something like this. It looks good. And the thickness can be 1, it's enough. Now let's make it a bit rounded. So if I set the corner radius to 4, it will be rounded, but it's not enough in my opinion. I usually set it to 12 for my buttons and it looks great. But if you want, you can make it completely rounded. You need to somehow analyze the characteristics of the brand you're designing for. If it's a formal brand, it's better to decrease this value. But if it's a friendly product, you can just completely make your button rounded. All right, now we need to change these values here because we don't have enough breathing room. So as for the vertical padding, I'm going to set it to 12. And as for the horizontal padding, I'm going to set it to 24. Usually, if you double this value and use it for the horizontal padding, you'll get enough breathing room around your text. So keep that in mind. This value doesn't matter, so you can set it to 0 since we have only one element inside. It doesn't matter. All right, our sign in button is ready. Now we need to design the other button, which is the start for free button. So I'm going to duplicate this sign in button, hit Ctrl D or Command D. I'm going to rename it to sign up, and I'm going to change this text to start for free. And as you can see, this button is responsive since we are using auto layout. It's pretty cool. This button should be a contained button or a solid button. So we need to use a fill for it and we need to get rid of the border. Therefore, I'm going to select the button frame here. I'm going to remove the stroke and I'm going to add a fill to it. As for the color, I'm going to use gray 900, the darkest color here, since it's going to act as our accent color. But here we don't have enough contrast between the foreground and the background. If I just select this text and if I run this plugin, look what we get. It fails the normal text AA and AAA. The AAA doesn't matter, but we should make sure that our colors pass the AA contrast ratio. How can we fix that? Well, we can just make this text lighter. So I'm going to select it and I'm going to use base white. Here we have two base colors. I'm going to use base white and now it passes the AA contrast ratio for sure. Let's run the plugin. Perfect. It passes all these tests. All right, our buttons are also ready, but what about the alignment? They should stay on the right side of this container always, right? So how can we make sure that they stay on the right side always? Well, first, we need to select them both. I'm going to select these two, and I'm going to put them inside another box, inside another auto layout frame. I'm going to hit Shift and A, and let's rename this frame to buttons. But how can we put it on the right side? Well, do you remember when we talked about different preferences of the auto layout section? We need to use them now. We need to change the spacing mode of our container from packed to space between to push these two elements, these two child elements to the sides. So I'm gonna select the container and I'm gonna align everything to the center here. Then I'm gonna head over to the advanced settings, and from here, I'm gonna change the spacing mode from packed to space between. And just like that, this content frame always stays on the left side of this container, and this buttons frame always stays on the right side of this container. Do you want me to prove that? Let me show you. If I select this nav bar and if I try to resize it, look what happens. You see that? That's exactly what we need. All right, our nav bar is almost ready, but I'm gonna add one more thing to it. Since I'm gonna use a white background for this homepage, I'm gonna separate this nav bar somehow, but I don't want to change its background. So what can we do? Well, I think we can add a border to the bottom edge of it. So I'm gonna select the nav bar section, not the container, the nav bar section, and I'm gonna head over to the stroke section and just add a stroke to it. We don't want this line to attract so much attention, therefore it should be very light. So gray 100 would work, and now our nav bar is ready. But is it responsive? Let's give it a try. If I select this desktop frame, and if I try to change the width of this frame, let me just hide my layout grid for a second. If I try to change its width, look what happens. Uh-oh, it's not responsive. Why? Because we didn't set the constraints yet. So let's go ahead and do that. But before we do that, we need to fix something. If I just zoom in here, as you can see, this stroke has been added to all sides of this nav bar. So we need to fix that. I'm going to select the nav bar, and here in the stroke section, I'm going to click on this icon, strokes per side. I can just say that, all right, I want this stroke to be added to the bottom edge only, just like this. And to make it responsive, I'm going to select the nav bar, not the container. Keep that in mind. I'm going to select the nav bar. And if I head over to the constraints here, you see that the constraints are set to top and left. That's why it wasn't responsive. What should we do? We just need to change the constraints to left and right to make sure that the left and right sides of this navbar section always stick to the sides of this desktop frame. Okay, and now if I select the desktop frame and I try to resize it, look what happens. You see, we have a fully responsive navbar, just like this. And that's exactly what we needed. So I'm gonna set the width to 1440 again, keep that in mind. And now we are ready to move on to the next section, the hero section. So I'll see you in the next lesson. Welcome back. In this video, we are going to start working on the hero section. But before we do that, I'd like to make a slight change to these buttons. We forgot to set the spacing between these two buttons. So if you go ahead and select this buttons frame, you can see that the spacing between these two buttons is set to 8. It's fine, but it's not ideal. So I'm going to increase it to 12. This way we can be sure that the user doesn't accidentally click on the other button. Alright, now let's get into the hero section. For the hero section, as usual, first we need to create the section. So I'm going to select this desktop frame and I'm going to increase its height just like this to make more room for our hero section. And now let's create the section. I'm going to hit A on my keyboard to select the frame tool and I'm going to draw a frame just like this. Make sure that its width is set to 1440. The height doesn't matter because it will hide the content later. Now I'm going to rename it to hero and I'm going to turn it into an auto layout frame. So I'm going to hit Shift and A just like this. And now I'm going to change the resizing options here, both to fixed width and fixed height. Yes, I know I said that it will hug the content vertically, but later we will change it. For now, I'm going to set them to fixed and fixed because I don't want it to hug the content. It would be so hard to work in that case. Alright, what about these values? Well, just like our navbar, the horizontal padding should be 150 and the vertical padding should be 0. Just like this. You can turn on the layout grid as well. And now let's see how we should structure our hero section. Let's take a look at our wireframe. Here we have a large headline, the supporting text, 2 buttons, and right underneath we have this large screenshot of the app. Here we also have a few clients logos, but you know what? I'm going to create a separate section for these logos. So basically our hero section is going to include this large screenshot and these elements right at the top. So what we can do is create two containers inside our hero section, and then inside those containers we can put the content. So let's do that. Here I'm going to select this hero, and I'm going to hit A on my keyboard to select the frame tool and just draw a container inside. As you can see, since we set the resizing options to fixed and fixed, when I created a frame inside, the dimension of our parent element, which is the hero frame here, didn't change. And that's so convenient, isn't it? So I'm going to select this one and I'm going to call it container. All right, now I'm going to add auto layout to this container. So hit Shift and A. And as usual, our container should take up the whole available width within its parent element, which is this hero frame. So while this container is selected, just change its horizontal resizing option to fill container. Just like that. We don't need to change the vertical option. It needs to hide the content inside. Now, while this container is selected, I'm going to duplicate it, hit Ctrl D or Command D. And as you can see, it sits right next to the previous one. That's not what I want. I want this box, this container, to be placed right below the other container. How can I do that? Yes, you're right. We can select the parent element, which is this hero frame, and just change its auto layout direction from horizontal to vertical. And now these containers sit on top of each other. All right, good. Now it's time to start adding elements to these containers. Let's start with the top one. I'm going to select it and let's see what we need inside. We need to have this large headline. Then underneath, we need to have the supporting text. And finally, we need to have these action buttons. So here is how I'm going to structure it. I want these two texts, the headline and the supporting text, to be inside one box. So we could set the spacing between them easily using auto layout. And then these two buttons should be inside another box or another frame. All right, so here I'm going to create another frame. I'm going to hit A on my keyboard and draw a frame inside. And I'm going to call it content. And let's add auto layout to it, hit Shift and A. And also make sure that your containers don't have any padding. So I'm going to select them both and set the horizontal and vertical padding to 0 and 0 because we don't need any padding inside. Now I'm going to select the content frame inside this container and set its horizontal resizing option to fill container. And inside we can start adding the text. So I'm going to hit T on my keyboard, left click to create a text layer. And here I'm going to type the headline. I'm going to type manage your customers using AI. It's way too small, isn't it? Basically, for the main headline, we should always use one of these display text styles, okay? You can choose between them. You can use the largest one, you can use the X large or medium, okay? For this one, I think large would make sense. I'm gonna set it to large bold. Yeah, it looks very good since I want to have only one line of text, just like what we see in our wireframe. Okay, good. I'm gonna select our content frame and make sure to remove the padding here as well. Make sure not to forget that. And now I'm gonna select this text and I'm gonna change its color. As for the color, I'm gonna use the darkest shade of our gray. So I'm gonna choose this one, gray 900, like this. And now we need to create our supporting text. So I'm gonna duplicate this text just like this, and it will be placed right next to it. It's fine. Now what we need to do is select both of these texts and put them inside another box. So I'm gonna hold down the Shift key to select them both, hit Shift and A to put them inside another auto layout frame. And now we can change the auto layout direction here to vertical, to stack them vertically. Here I'm gonna rename this frame to heading and supporting text. And now I'm gonna select this duplicated text layer and just change its text style because it's too big for the description. So here I'm gonna change it to text XL maybe. Yeah, something like this, text XL medium. And as for the color, I'm gonna choose gray 400. And we know for sure that it passes the contrast ratio test. If you want, you can just run the plugin and you can just double check it. All right, here I'm gonna type powerful, flexible, and data-driven. Polio makes it easy to build the exact CRM your business needs. Just like this, but here we have one line of text and it's too long. If you remember, we talked about the line length in the previous lessons. It's better to keep them short to make sure our users won't lose focus while reading them. So here I'm going to change its resizing option from hog to fixed width, and we can just change its width to whatever amount we want. I'm going to decrease it all the way down to maybe 628, something like this. Yeah, I think it looks good. Now we have two lines of text, and now we can select this heading and supporting text frame and just change the spacing between these two texts. At the moment it's set to 8, it's not enough. I'm going to increase it to 24. And obviously it should be center aligned, so we need to select its parent element, which is this content frame, and just align everything to the center. And also here we need to select this child element, heading and supporting text frame, and align everything to the center. All right, the first part is done. Now we need to place these action buttons right underneath. So here I'm going to place a demo button and a start for free button. So instead of creating them from scratch, I'm going to select these buttons here in the nav bar. We created this buttons frame. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to select this content frame within our container here and just paste it here. Hit Ctrl V or Command V. It's placed right next to this frame. That's fine. We need to select our content frame and just change the direction to vertical like that. And now we need to have more margin between these two elements, between this frame and this frame. How can we do that? We can select the parent element, this content frame, and just increase this value. I'm going to set it to 48. All right, so far so good. The top container is ready. Now we need to work on the next container. So here inside this container, we need to place a large screenshot of the product. To do that, I'm going to create a frame inside, but not an auto layout frame. I'm just going to hit A on my keyboard and just draw a frame like this. Make sure that its width is set to 1140, and I'm going to increase its height to something like 756, which is also an increment of 4. Let me just increase it to 756, and I'm going to rename it to content. All right, now we need to place an image inside this content frame. How can we do that? Yes, we can just drag and drop an image inside, or we can just add a field to it. We can head over to the field section, just hit this plus button. Then I'm going to click on this square here. And from here, I'm going to select image, and I'm going to choose an image from the assets folders. All right, here in the assets folder, I'm going to open up this screenshots folder. And inside you'll find two screenshots of this product that I already prepared. I already designed these dashboards because basically the client or the company should provide these screenshots. Since this is a fictional project, I designed them already. So here I'm gonna need this dashboard desktop version. I'm gonna double click on it, and as you can see, it's placed inside this frame. But it's cut off here, that's fine, we are gonna fix that. To fix this issue, we just need to select this hero frame, the main frame, and as you can see, its vertical resizing option is set to fixed. We need to change it to hog content, to hog the content inside, to hog these two containers. Okay, let's see what we have. It looks good, but I'm gonna add some drop shadow to this content frame to make it elevate a little bit. So for that, I'm gonna select this content frame. I'm gonna head over to the effects section, hit this plus button, and just add a drop shadow to it. I'm gonna open up the settings, and from here, I'm gonna use this particular color and just decrease the opacity down to 10%. It should be so subtle. And I'm gonna increase the blur to something like 36. Let's see what we've got. I'm gonna hide my layout grid here for a second. So as you can see, the drop shadow doesn't appear. Let's see why. I'm gonna select this content frame. All right, here is why. As you can see, when I select this content frame, here we have this checkbox which says clip content. So it's basically clipping the content inside. It's masking the content inside. That's why we cannot see the drop shadow. We need to uncheck that, and still nothing. That's fine. Now we need to select this container and just uncheck this one as well. Now we can see the drop shadow. As you can see here, I'm gonna zoom in. we have the drop shadow, it's fine, but here it's cut off. We need to fix that. You know what to do. You just need to select this hero section and just uncheck this clip content. Now we can see the drop shadow on all sides. Okay, so far so good, but this content frame is not rounded. So I'm gonna select it and I'm gonna increase the corner radius here to 16 to make it a little bit rounded. Now it looks much better. All right, we have both of our containers ready. Now it's time to set the spacing because we don't have enough breathing room between our content. So I'm gonna select the hero section, and first let's set the spacing between these two containers inside. Since we have two completely separate containers, we cannot use something like 24. It wouldn't be enough. If I just set it to 24, as you can see, there is not enough breathing room. So we need to use something greater than that. So maybe 64 would work. Yeah, 64 looks great, but what about the top padding here? There is no padding above this top container. Well, for that, I'm gonna select the hero section and I'm gonna change the vertical padding to 96, just like this, to push everything down. However, now we added a 96 pixel bottom padding as well, and that's not what I want. And I'll tell you why, because in the next lesson, we are gonna add this section here right below this hero section, and that section already has some padding. That's why I'm gonna add this padding to the top side only. To do that, we just need to click on this icon and just remove the bottom padding. I'm gonna set it to 0. And just like that, our hero section is ready. It looks beautiful, doesn't it? I hope you like it. All right, now let's check whether everything is responsive or not. I'm gonna select our desktop frame and I'm gonna try to change the width. As you can see, it's not, and you know why? We just need to select this hero section and we need to set the constraints to left and right and top. And now let's see whether it's responsive or not. Not yet, that's fine. Let me select this content frame inside this container. And here, as you can see, the resizing option is set to fixed. I'm gonna set it to fill container. All right, now let's give it a try and see whether it works or not. As you can see, it works perfectly. But there is one more thing I'd like to do here. I'm gonna select this headline here within this heading and supporting text frame, and I'm gonna change its horizontal resizing option to fill container. This way we can make it responsive. Now I'm gonna select this heading and supporting text frame, and I want it to fill the container, its parent container. So I'm gonna set its resizing option to fill container, just like that. And now let's give it a try and see whether it works or not, whether it's responsive or not. You see that? Now our headline is responsive. This description is not responsive because we set its width to fixed. If you want it to be responsive, you need to set its resizing option to fill container, but then you'll get this long text layer, which is not good. But if you do that, now this one would be responsive as well. You see that? It's completely responsive. So keep that in mind. I'm just gonna undo it. But there is also one trick that I'm gonna show you which is quite helpful. If you really want to make this text responsive and you also want to make sure that you maintain this optimal line length, in that case you can select this text, you can put it inside another frame. I'm gonna hit Shift and A, just like this, to put it inside another frame. Just remove the vertical padding. Now I'm gonna select the text. I'm gonna set its horizontal resizing option to fill container, and then I'm gonna select this frame, rename this frame to supporting text, and I'm gonna set its resizing option to fill container again. Now what we can do is add some padding around it. So here, if we just increase the horizontal padding like this, look what we get. I'm gonna set it to 224, and now this text is also responsive. So here, if I go ahead and select this desktop frame and I try to resize it, look what we get. You see, we get a fully responsive hero section. Before we wrap up this video, I need to zoom in here. As you can see, there is a gap between these two sections. I'm gonna get rid of it. It's not good. I'm gonna select this hero section and just move it up by 2 pixels using the arrow keys on my keyboard. So let's move it up, and now everything looks great. Welcome back. In this video, we are going to design the social proof section together. So let's dive in. Here, I'm going to create a frame again. First, let me select this desktop frame and increase its height, just like this. Now I'm going to hit A on my keyboard to select a frame tool and just draw a frame, just like that. Make sure that its width is set to 1440. I'm going to rename it to social proof, and I'm going to add auto layout to it. So I'm going to hit Shift and A to make it responsive. As usual, you know what to do. Let's set its horizontal resizing option to fixed width. And also we need to set its horizontal padding to 150. And the vertical padding should be set to 96. Why? If you remember, for our hero section, we set its top padding to 96 and we set the bottom padding to 0. And I told you that the reason I set the bottom padding of our hero section to 0 is because our social proof section will have some top padding. And since everything should be consistent, we need to use the exact same number for the vertical padding of all our sections. Okay, now inside this social proof frame, I'm going to create the container. So I'm going to hit A on my keyboard and draw a frame just like this. Let's rename it to container and let's add auto layout to it, hit Shift and A. Now I'm going to set its horizontal resizing option to fill container and just get rid of the horizontal and vertical padding. We don't need them for our container. And now let's see how we can structure this section. For this section, we just need to have one text layer and a few logos underneath. So since these logos are related, I'm going to put them inside their own box or inside their own frame, auto layout frame. And then this text doesn't need to be inside any frame. So inside this container, I'm going to hit T on my keyboard, left click to create a text layer. And here I'm going to type trusted by Fortune 500 companies. Like that, but it's way too big. I'm going to make it smaller. So let's change its text style to maybe text medium, like this. And as for the color, let's set it to gray 400. If you remember, we used gray 400 here as well for the supporting text. So I'm going to set its color to gray 400. All right, so far so good. Now I'm going to align it to the center of this container. So I'm going to select this container, align everything to the center. And now we need to put our logos here. So from the assets folder, please open up this logos folder. And here you can find this clients folder as well. Open it up. And here I placed 6 different logos. For the hero section, for this desktop version, we just need to have 5 logos according to our wireframe. Later, for the desktop version and the mobile version, we need to add 1 more logo. That's why we have 6 different logos here. But you know what? Let's select them all and let's just drag them and drop them inside our project somewhere here. Let's put them somewhere around here. And we need to pick 5 of them. Maybe these 5 would look good. I'm going to select them and duplicate them. Then cut them, hit Ctrl X or Command X. Now I'm going to paste them inside this container. So I'm going to select this container, hit Ctrl V or Command V, and just paste them here. All right, now these logos are not inside any box. As I said, we need to put them inside their own box. So we need to put them inside an auto layout frame. But before you do that, I want to point out something. There are times when you need to put some logos on your page, okay? And chances are the logos you find on the internet have different widths and different heights, right? When you import them to Figma, you don't need to adjust both the width and the height, okay? You need to make sure that the height of all those logos is the same. So here, as you can see, the height of all these logos is set to 32. If one of them is set to 35, the other one is set to 30, the other one is set to, I don't know, 40, it wouldn't look good because when your container tries to hug the content inside, you will end up with some empty space around your logos, which is not good. So make sure to set the height of all your logos to the same value when you're working with different logos. All right, I'm going to select them all now, and I'm going to put them inside an auto layout frame. I'm going to hit Shift and A to put them inside their own frame. And I'm going to rename it to logos. All right, there is one thing we need to correct here. Here we have this FedEx logo, but this express line is not part of the main logo. So we need to get rid of that. Since it's an SVG logo, we can simply select all these letters just like this and just get rid of them. hit delete on your keyboard to remove them. And now we need to select this FedEx logo, this group inside, and just scale it up. I'm going to hit K on my keyboard, and here I'm going to set its height to 32, just like that. Don't worry about it, it's going to be fixed. I'm going to cut it, hit Ctrl X. Now I'm going to select this FedEx Express frame and just paste it here. Hit Ctrl V or Command V. I can bring it down just like that. And now we just need to select this frame, hold down the Ctrl or Command key, and just adjust the frame's width, just like this and like that. When you work with logos, there are times when you need to modify them like this, so it's good to know the process. Okay, our logos look good now. Now we need to place this logos frame below this title, right? To do that, we just need to select this container and just change the auto layout direction from horizontal to vertical, like this. And also I'm going to increase the spacing between these two elements, between this text and this frame, to 32. And also it's a good idea to just increase the spacing between these logos. But what should be the value here? Should I set it to 32? Should I set it to 64? What value should I use here? Well, if we use a fixed number here, this section wouldn't be responsive. So basically we want this value to be automatically adjusted based on the screen's width. How can we achieve that? Yes, you're right. We need to head over to the advanced settings and we need to change the spacing mode from packed to space between. And now, as you can see, this value is set to auto, which means that it will automatically change according to the screen's width. Now I'm going to select this logos frame and just change its width to fill container, just like that. Now let's see whether it's responsive or not. First, I'm gonna select this social proof and just set its constraints to left and right. Keep that in mind. And also there is a gap between these two sections, which is not good. Always get rid of this gap. So I'm gonna move it up using the arrow keys on my keyboard. And if you want to check the padding or margin, you can always hold down the Option or Alt key on your keyboard and just hover over this area. And as you can see now, we have a 2 pixel gap between these two sections. I'm going to move it up by 2 pixels and it's gone. And just like this, our social proof section is also ready. Let's see whether it's responsive or not. All right, as you can see, the spacing between these logos is changing automatically according to our screen's width. And that's exactly what we needed. Before we wrap up this video, I'd like to make one change here as well. Just like what we did with this headline, we need to select this text and we need to set its horizontal resizing option to fill container. It won't be affected at the moment, but basically we are defining a maximum width for this text layer. So it takes up the whole available width of its parent container.